Hello and welcome to the Holy Rivals Show. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown, and with me is my partner in crime, the Wild Ute. How we doing, Ute?
What's going on? How you doing, Bomber?
I'm doing great. Had a good weekend. I want to appreciate everybody for giving me thanks. In recognition my grandmother died, and that was a big deal for me. It was my last grandparent, and I really appreciate everybody who sent me personal messages. That meant a lot to me. With us today, we're going to be doing a carousel. So there's going to be influencers from across the Big 12 that are going to come in and really give us their opinions about what this new look conference looks like. I hope you guys are excited about that.
Absolutely.
Let's see. We
got that, Bomber. I can't believe we're all on the same roof now. How about that?
Well, I think it's okay. Yeah.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought, right?
Seriously,
it's almost like it was meant to be.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. With us first is starting off is Justin Koo's corner. Let's see. How do we want to talk about this upcoming season, Justin?
Hey man, look, I'm excited about these new entries into the league. Utah, a great brand to bring into the league. You've got Colorado with Coach Prime. I mean, how that makes everything exciting. Think about this: Coach Prime and Brett Yormark together. My gosh, it'll be like a marketing extravaganza. Anyway, right. Then you've got obviously Arizona State. Arizona, awesome. Arizona State, their fans are awesome. Not sure about their AD and their president, but if you want to talk about that, man, that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, glad to have all these four teams in. Going to be exciting, and it's going to be a fun league, man.
Absolutely, 100%. And Immaculate, who's one of our permanent panel members, how are we doing today, Immaculate?
Doing really good. Go Hawks.
But I'm here actually. Gear on.
But I'm here for the Big 12 today. I'm excited actually for this conference.
We appreciate you.
Guy too, aren't you?
I'm in Scottsdale, so I'm not connected to that, but I want to see the Devils do pretty good. We'll say that.
Yeah, we'll have to see. They're not making friends early. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, that's the point,
really
right?
Quick.
You don't want friends. You want enemies.
Well, that's what everybody says. All right. If you're new to the show, please subscribe. Hit us up with a comment or a suggestion. Give us a thumbs up, and then obviously you have an opportunity to leave comments. We are doing so many comments now every show. It's really hard to get to people. Don't take it personal if I don't get to it. But all super chats I get to, and we make sure that you're acknowledged. We don't take those for granted. And then obviously you could become a subscriber. I'm not talking a regular subscriber. I'm talking about a subscriber with a membership level that'll really profile your comments to us, and we try to highlight those every show. Ute, I'm going to give you a couple minutes here. So Utah's in, and how are you feeling? You got a big grin on your face.
This was an amazing weekend in the Wild Ute household. Guys, so my family's all from Kansas. I grew up in Utah. I went to University of Utah, but I've got a lot of K-State and KU relatives. And I'll tell you what, like personally, this was just an amazing experience. Like my dad's a KSU grad, so we were just celebrating that, being under one roof, having tailgate parties here at Rice Eccles, going elsewhere in the Big 12. It is so cool. I am so excited to be in the Big 12 conference. I think it's awesome. It's going to lift exposure for the Utes. I see good times ahead, really. So I am elated to be here.
That is fantastic. I love hearing your energy, and it is good. I think it's going to help all the new schools, and boy, the conference is a lot stronger. Boy, over the weekend, Coos, we had this sort of dust up with ASU's AD, saying some stuff that in my opinion, was really ill-advised, especially as you're trying to make friends and influence people in this new conference you're going to be in a year. How did you take those comments? And actually, what's even more important is how did you feel about all the support you guys received?
Oh, man, the support. First off, let's touch on the support piece. I tell you what, man, if any West Virginia fans were still, up in the air about how much they like this conference, some of them still feeling like we should be in the ACC. If the love and support we got this past weekend after those comments by Ray Anderson didn't make you feel warm and fuzzy about being in the Big 12, something's wrong with you. Right. It was touching, man, to see all these different fan bases, a lot of Big 12 media folks just defending Morgantown, talking about how great of a city. I mean, heck, David Ubben from The Athletic even put out a retweet on it. And, it was just so awesome to see all these people saying such good things about West Virginia, about the city of Morgantown, and really, bashing. I don't want to say bashing, but really taking exception to what Ray Anderson had to say, and it made me feel really good. So kudos to all my fellow Big 12 folks out there. It's much appreciated, man. And trust me, the love is returned. Next thing on my to-do list, I've got to get me a Big 12 banner to go on my wall behind me.
Yep.
I've got to get that done, and that made me want to do that even more. So
I think we all need to do that, Coos. I need a Big 12 banner too. After
So I ordered one 3 weeks ago. They've been on back order. That's how many people have wanted them since the new
Awesome.
Seriously, since July 1st, they've been on back order. So I was expecting mine last week and it still hasn't shown up. So if you want one, order it now. The problem is that we might not be a Big 12 in a year. It might be Big 16. So just know that flag might be getting retired. Right?
That's okay, man. I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts. Right.
I agree. And I'm doing the same thing. It'll replace the Ukraine flag, even though I really support Ukraine's stuff.
Yeah.
So Immaculate, first of all, you're an Iowa guy. You come and you've transplanted into this snowbird heaven that is Phoenix. You're an ASU area. So what did you take about the comments from the AD at ASU? I think this is something we need to explore. And then second, what do you think the outlook's going to be for that group as we go through this next year?
Well, as far as the AD goes, it's kind of more of the same. He's not well liked here. So if anyone's thinking that this represents the ASU faithful and the people here, it does not. I think to some degree, I think maybe he was trying to make some comment about how he doesn't want to go up into the cold, but it just came off as pretty terrible. Like, why would you? I don't want to go to Morgantown. I've been watching a documentary of a guy who's been up in the area up through West Virginia, kind of looking through it. And it's a fascinating area with a wonderful story. It's beautiful. So I think maybe from an Arizona perspective, he's just like, he doesn't want to go up into the cold because it's so hot. It's like, it's 110 plus here every day now. So, but it's just a bad comment. And I don't see how he gets away with at least not coming out with a public apology, with trying to explain like what he meant. He needs to do something because the people here don't like it. The people that I'm seeing online that are all, sun deviled out, they're not happy with it. So, and in terms of Crow, well, you're going to have to get used to that guy. Now he's in your conference. I don't think he's going anywhere. They've just released some numbers in terms of Arizona State's growth and incoming class that I think have to be wrong. They're insane numbers. The school is growing quite large, especially with the research in certain areas like semiconductor research. So he's probably not going anywhere. Sorry. And he's full of wonderful sound bites, let me tell you. But
okay,
the AD after Herm Edwards and then this, he might be on a hot seat. So
I felt like Crow kind of baited him into the comment a little bit with that. Let's just put you in office in Morgantown. He kind of baited him into it to a degree. I thought
to a degree, yeah.
But Anderson should have said, "Yeah, nah," haha, and just kept moving.
Exactly.
If I was Anderson, I'd be like, "Hey, that sounds good. Have you seen it up there? It's beautiful." Like you just you want to come back with something that is complimentary. I don't care if you think it or not. Like, you should come back with something complimentary, just as like off the cuff. Instead, he came back with, "No, I'm sending this guy, not me." And it was just weird. It was just kind of
say that, guys. Like, you're talking about the president and the AD of a university. Like, you cannot say that. That's so inappropriate. So
you'd be surprised how much those guys, they're not that well polished. Like, they're just so used to everyone kind of bending over for them.
And they kept tossing out their Ivy League credentials and everything. And I'm thinking, man, if you had all these Ivy League credentials, you should be able to think on your feet a little better and not speak off the cuff and say something so stupid. I mean, I did a video touching on it yesterday. And by the way, most of the Arizona State fans, like you said, Immaculate, actually agreed with me on it and thought it was inappropriate. Most of the people who disagreed with me were not even Arizona State people.
Right.
And the comeback I kept getting was the people that it didn't bother were like, well, he just doesn't want to fly that far. I said, man, do you realize who you're talking to? West Virginia's been flying halfway across the country for over a decade in their conference. Yes. Not one time have I heard any of our ADs or any president come out and say they don't want to visit one of the other schools.
Here's the comeback for you, brother. If they say that to you, ask them, would Arizona State have accepted an invite to the Big Ten if they got one? And if they got one, would they have complained about going to Penn State? Would they have complained about going to Maryland? Would they have complained about going to
Right.
Rutgers? No. So
Yes.
it was in poor taste. I don't think he meant as much by it as it sounds, because it sounds
Right.
horrible, but it's just a horrible response, and of someone that you would expect to be more polished and be more on guard for those type of things.
Right.
So
agreed. That's I mean, it's not. I don't find it offensive. I just find it unprofessional.
Right.
And
it's embarrassing for ASU
and
folks more than I
disrespectful.
think it's disrespectful to everyone else. I think it's embarrassing to ASU folks. And
well, let's think about this. It's their first look, right? They got almost rescued at the end of the day.
Right.
The Big Ten was not picking them up, so they really needed the helping hand. It turns out that Utah and ASU came in underfunded, so they're going to have to get money back from the conference members to join essentially as a full term next year. So this was a bit of charity, to be honest, and to come in and then slap the hand away seems really out of taste. Let's sort of move on. Let's get to Sergeant Pickles here, who's a UW dog, and he's saying, "Good evening, all go Dogs." He's obviously excited about the move to the Big Ten.
He's got to be on cloud 9, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think Washington and Oregon, they're going to do great in the Big Ten, and we'll have a different show on that. Maybe Wednesday night, we'll sort of dive into that part of it, Pickles, and we'll definitely talk about Oregon and Washington, what those next steps are going to be. But today we're celebrating the Big 12 and everything that is going to be. So, Kuz, we got 6 minutes here. Give us your high level. Where do you think this conference ends up in 3-4 years when we start talking about the college football playoff in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got, when you have brands like Utah, when you have brands, I think, Arizona State is on the come up. I think with Dillingham there, you have obviously BYU, who's a good brand, good programs. I think UCF is absolutely destroying the recruiting right now.
Right.
They are. Oh, they just got another 4-star running back today.
How many 4 stars do they have, Kuz?
You caught me off guard. I think they have 4 or 5.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. They're killing it, man. That big 3 that they talk about in Florida is going to be the big 4 before long. So, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be exciting football, and I don't even want to talk about the basketball. It's going to be astronomical, but yeah, it's exciting, man. I mean, as a West Virginia fan, I'm excited about it. It's always exciting to play new teams, new opponents. Utah and West Virginia have only played twice in their history. The last time didn't go so well for us, so we look forward to hopefully getting the Utes back for that bowl game disaster from a few years ago. So yeah, I mean, it's last time we played Arizona State a few years ago in a bowl game. That was pretty cool. We share an ex-coach with Arizona, Rich Rodriguez. So
right.
I mean, it's just exciting, man. It's exciting. I think this is going to position the Big 12 to get a much better media deal in 2031 when this deal expires, especially if these brands can live up to what I think they can going forward. You've got and let's not overlook the markets we're bringing in. We're bringing in Salt Lake City. We're bringing or the rest of Salt Lake City. I mean, we already had part of it with BYU, right? So we're getting the great rivalry with the Holy War. We're bringing in Phoenix, the Phoenix market. We're bringing in Boulder and Denver. I mean, not to mention Orlando, Cincinnati, Houston. I mean, guys, I think this conference could very well be set up for future success and can remain part of the power. What looks like it may end up being the Power 3. Everybody talks about the Power 2. I see no reason the Big 12 cannot be a Power 3 conference going forward.
Yeah, we're actually calling that an A3 around here, meaning auto-qualified, right? There, you're automatically in the group, and I think that's right. I think 3 is the final number. We all know that there's distress currently at the ACC, and that's a big deal because as the ACC goes, obviously there are teams that the Big 12 would like to pick up, and the dream pickup, I think, for all of us would agree would be Pitt. If the Big 12 can pick up Pitt in that sort of a scenario, boy, that would really, I mean, it would solidify the conference. Now you got the Holy War You got the West Virginia game, and then obviously the Territorial Cup, which is the Arizona State. So there's some strong rivalries there, and we would be able to really hit that up. Let's see. I'm going to do a few shout outs here. Let me get off this comment. Since Greg Swaim hasn't shown up yet, we're just going to keep going with you, Goose.
Yeah,
that's all right. Let's say hi to a few people that we've got here at the beginning. We got Blake and Nathan Campbell and Conundrum and Laura Weiss and Earl Carr. There's literally so many people in here today. Kaufman and Mr. Monkey and obviously, let's see, that's Wild Ute replying back and forth. By the way, I reached out to Larry Pilgrim. I did talk to him. He's in a good headspace. So if you guys are friends of Larry, he'll be on the show again. I'm not sure it's going to be today, but he's doing okay. Scott Reed's here. Renee Rocha. I love this. This is a great comment I came across earlier. Per my sources, SEC proposing a new 6-conference game model that would allow for FCS game every other week, which is only fair because the SEC is the toughest conference. What do you guys think of that?
It just means more, baby.
I agree. That's really funny, actually.
It's messy logic. Pay us more for less.
Unfortunately, it's the world we live in, right? The power's there. David Hackett's here. Kaufman's here. Those are both subscribers. Scott Reed, I might have said his name already. John Coy. Hey, John, good to see you.
We got UCF Realist in the house. AMAC. Husky Hawks in the house.
Thank you. Dustin Flannery. Oh, yeah, Big 12 Earl. Good job. Good way to call him out. Now, are you on the Holy Rivals channel, Ute?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, call out some more there because I don't see those.
Yeah, so we got Starry in the house too. And again, we have Husky Hawk, G Brew. What's up, guys? Thanks for joining us. Coming in. Volon Angel 1811. Welcome in. Blake Phillips. Yep. We got everybody in the house. Hey, welcome.
That's fantastic. Earl Carr's member for 1 month. He's our first subscriber that's a member for a month. Thanks, Earl.
Hey, nice job.
Just call us Bomber and a merry band of followers. That's funny. Okay. All right, so let's move on to another comment and question that I had for you guys. You guys heard about the Board of Regents meeting at Clemson?
I did.
That's supposed to be coming up, I believe, is it tomorrow or Wednesday?
Wednesday.
And that is a big deal, obviously, because it affects the ACC. What do you two guys believe that that's going to turn out to be? Are we looking at a Clemson Florida State move?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
I mean, are you
either one of you? Doesn't matter. Even you. I mean, I wasn't trying to call out anybody.
Go, Cruz. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think eventually, yes. I mean, there's a lot of smoke out there about, Florida State potentially doing something, sooner rather than later. Obviously, we all know about that August 15th date. The question I have is, and of course, we all know, they went out and got a private equity firm to help finance it.
Mm-hmm.
But the question I have is Clemson going to pull the trigger along with Florida State? Are they going to wait a while? Are they still going to try to hang in with the ACC? I'll be anxious to see. And also, the whole Stanford ACC talking to Stanford and Cal now, that throws a little bit of a curveball into this thing too. Where does that stand? Where, does that affect any of the potential ACC moves? There's just so much. The conference chaos, the conference realignment stuff never sleeps, man. It's
right.
Just continuous. We did get the report today. The Big 12 looks like they say they're done anyway. We'll see if they actually are. But yeah, it would surprise me to see Clemson make a move right along with, or at least close behind, Florida State.
Oh, it's just going to happen. It's going to happen, guys. Yeah, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina. This thing's breaking. It's breaking. You can see the cracks. There's going to be some madness, guys. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel it. I can see it. I've just lived it for a year in the pack, but this is happening so quick. And if Florida State can get this exit out, oh my gosh, it's going to be – it's a jailbreak. I'm telling you, it's going to be a jailbreak. And so I know that we're celebrating today because we're all under one roof here, but we have to be aggressive. Brett Yormark has to be aggressive. And if that's grabbing 2 teams on the West Coast with Oregon State and SDSU at reduced shares and locking that up, that can get us to 18, then go after 6 ACC schools. It makes perfect sense to me, honestly, to do that. And then you'd have a whole nationwide conference, better travel, and kind of figure it out from there. But I think that's coming. I really do.
Immaculate?
Well, here's the general truth to it. you don't have meetings to say we're just going to keep on doing the same thing. If your mind is to keep on doing the same thing, you don't have a meeting. And it's already been shown, there were some people who were looking online, that this was not on the register. So this wasn't like an already set meeting. This one was called for.
Yeah.
Right.
So is it about realignment? We don't know yet. But we do know that the Florida State Board of Trustees meeting that happened, that with all the talking points and everything that we heard about, that was not on the agenda. That happened after everything that was on the agenda. So really, we have no idea what's going to come of this. So it's just kind of just wait and see. But chances are it's about what's going on. In terms of Stanford and Cal, you could go any route with that. You know, is this meant to try to keep Notre Dame in when some schools leave? Is it meant to just cover tracks for 2 leaving, bring 2 in, so you have the same amount of content so ESPN can't call for renegotiation? There's a lot to this. Even going so far into future stuff that I don't go into yet, but when you look at whom Stanford kind of hangs around with in terms of long-term backfilling, I actually think it's a very good move for the ACC to do. It's kind of surprising that Stanford and Cal would want to do it long-term. But,
right.
You know, for the Big 12, what this leads to is, like you guys were talking earlier with Pitt. Does it make Louisville on board? If you could get Pitt, Louisville with West Virginia and Cincy, I mean, how good would that be, Coos?
Oh, man. You two big rivalries right there. Cincinnati, Louisville's a big rivalry. I don't
How
know
long
how
has
many
it
people
been
realize
since you've
that.
had something like that? Like
it's been a while.
2010, 2011?
Yeah. I mean, we play Pitt now, but it's not the same when you're not in the same conference.
No, it's not.
You
As
still
an
love
Iowa
having-
guy,
Yeah.
I wish Iowa State was in the same conference. And I know it's
we
not
all
gonna
feel
happen.
that. We all feel that pain.
But hey, I still get to see them here going up against Arizona State. So I'm going to see more Iowa State than I'm going to see Iowa. I'm going to get to see Iowa State come to town and probably go there with my dad who graduated from Iowa State. So that'll be cool.
Got some super chats coming in here. Blake Phillips, thank you very much, Blake, for the super chat. It says football degenerates assemble. Degenerates, I guess.
He wants
Ron Burgundy voice.
Blake's always good to humble us. Thank you, Blake.
Appreciate that, Blake.
All right, we've got Cody Stovall is going to be coming on next. So, Coos, I'm going to give you the last word. What do you want to say to these people about this new Big 12?
Well, I just want to say, welcome to the new members, Wild Ute. Thank you. Welcome to you and your Utes. Welcome Arizona State and their awesome fans. Welcome Arizona, they're awesome fans. Welcome to Colorado and what seem to be awesome fans for the most part. Let's get ready for some exciting football, some exciting basketball, some great rivalries, back in this conference that have been missing. And I think Brett Yormark in the Big 12 has sent a message that we're here to stay and we're not going away easily. So I'm looking forward to it. I really am. And Nathan, thank you for having me on, man. It means a lot. And thank you to Wild Ute as well.
Of course. Yeah. Everybody that's following and watching this show right now or watches it later on recording, please subscribe to everyone on here right now. Subscribe to Wild Ute, subscribe to Immaculate, subscribe to Coos and Coos' Corner on YouTube. We got to feed and help each other. And that's what part of this unity statement of the Big 12 is. And I really appreciate you being here, Coos, and giving us some of your time.
Immaculate.
And
good seeing you
covering
again.
for Greg Swain. I appreciate you covering.
You're going to have to get on Greg.
I will. He actually had a family thing. He sent me a text.
That's all good. It's all good.
Anyway, we'll see you later. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Everyone have a good
bye-bye.
night.
Okay, Coos.
Bye, Coos.
All right. So coming into this party house now, we got a whole other level of energy.
Hey, what's up, Cody?
Cody.
Well, how goes it, fellas? How goes it?
What's up,
I don't know.
Conference
We're doing okay. We almost got 200 people watching this live, which is just insane because we're nobodies. So tell us how you're feeling, brother.
The power of the beard should at least be able to retain 2 or 3 of them. I'm feeling phantasmic. If there was a better word, I would try to use it. But us Truck Stop Conference originals, we're not necessarily up to snuff on all the academia side of things. So I'm going to use my simplistic language, and I'm going to like it. But guys, I'm very, very happy, very, very happy right now. This is what's best for the Big 12. I think this is the the direction that college football is going to. I'm glad to announce that I don't have to drive to Utah to give Wild Ute a case of beer and a steak. That's how I want to kick this thing off here. All right, I'm feeling good.
Hey, we're gonna film that dinner live, by the way. I haven't forgotten about that bet.
What do you mean? What do you mean? There's no bet. They can't make 18 million in the Pac-12 if there ain't no Pac-12. What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Hey, Cody, I've got to ask you. Okay, so
Yeah.
So, guys, I know that we're almost approaching the 2023 season for football, but I'm really wondering about 2024, right?
Right.
Like, just forward looking to 2024, who's going to be the team to beat, you think, in this new Big 12, Big 16, Big 24, or whatever it might be?
Well, I might have went to school for kids that can't read good, but if you read what I'm reading, it's going to be Utah, right? Is that what you're fishing for?
That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous.
No,
man.
I do love the fact that Utah they're coming in, stirring the pot a little bit. Instantaneously, it went from good, this is awesome. We're glad we got in too, and I know you've seen it because it's your people, your brethren. It's a lot of, we're going to run the Big 12. Like, that escalated very quickly. And you know what? Utah will have something to say for sure. But I think all of us can agree that the schedule in the Big 12 is different than the schedule you're going to face in the Pac-12. The Pac-12 does have some phenomenal quarterbacks. The Pac-12 does have some good football. Yeah. But you don't have to pack a lunch and be prepared to go to work and go to war every single week. Going to Lawrence, Kansas ain't very easy. Going to Ames, Iowa ain't very easy. Oh, and by the way, every stadium will be not only packed out, but they'll be pretty accommodating in the process.
It's going to be
they're
loud.
not going to use an easy time out there. I promise you that. They're going to be juiced for that game. So it's going to be tough sledding. I'm really excited to play Texas Tech. I know Laura's out there. I know Starry's out there. We've got a lot of Tech fans in the house. I want to be so mad after all the stuff, after all the crap that you guys have thrown our way. Man, I've taken hundreds, thousands of lashings. Sweet revenge, Texas Tech fans. Sweet revenge.
Hey, that could be a rivalry brewing right there. That could be a rivalry brewing. I'm so sad that I missed our main man, Coos. Please tell me he gave you at least a little bit of a hard time in regards to scheduling. If Brett Yormark doesn't make the very first Big 12 road trip game, Utah in Morgantown, he's messing up. He's missing that boat.
No, it's Arizona State.
Arizona State.
Cody.
Arizona State.
It's Arizona State. And we did talk about ASU, yes.
Okay, good.
I gave him plenty of time to sort of, the purpose of this show today is to burn all this negativity out, and let's just get it out in the open and get on, down the road. So,
buddy, I don't think that there's anybody that understands the landscape and football and all that fun jazz that doesn't realize that it's not great for the game. None of this realignment's great for the game, but it is the landscape that we all find ourselves within. And for it being what it is, the Big 12's in a really good spot. Adding Utah was a phenomenal move. I know Arizona State AD might want to, not work on his inner George Kliavkoff and put his foot in his mouth as often. But nonetheless, man, I think everybody realizes this is what's great for the conference. And I think that's why you didn't see UConn make the move, right? Brett Yormark is an East Coast guy. We just did a Big 12 event in Rucker Park for a reason. You and I had talked about this, Bomber. We've had the conversation about having some Big 12 events in Madison Square Garden. UConn's a natural fit for what Brett Yormark wants to do. Oh, and by the way, there's this little thing up the road in Bristol, Connecticut. We may have all heard of it, called ESPONO.
Yeah.
Right? But Brett Yormark understands the landscape and said, well, hold on. I'll give everybody a chance to hold my beer later, but the four corner schools make sense. This is what makes sense, and this is what's best for the conference. So, I love it.
I 100% agree with you. Just so you know, we spiked like 30 people the minute you got on because everybody could feel this energy you bring.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate that. Immaculate was bringing us down.
I'm trying to fluff the beard around. That's all.
We got this comment from our web, and I hope in context you know what he's talking about, Immaculate. He says, Immaculate, the Pac had plenty of meetings to do the same thing. Can you back up what that was? Sorry, I got to this late, our web. I apologize.
I think we were talking about like the meetings that Clemson is having. I think he's talking about Board of Trustees, Board of Regents style meetings that all happened leading up to. And these are like smoke signals, as you might say, that let you know something is out there, something's ahead. Here we go. They don't have those meetings to say everything's great, everything's good here. We don't need to do a damn thing. Right. They have these meetings because they need to do something. And so that's where I think it's coming. And just to kind of get back over to Cody here, loving the energy, Oklahoma State right now is primed to actually become a top tier program. You don't have Oklahoma, you don't have Texas above that. Even when you have great seasons, everyone seems to want to talk about them. When you look at the landscape in this conference right now, I see Oklahoma State being quite possibly the premier program. You've got maybe the best game day atmosphere at a stadium right there. Probably some of the best football played there over the recent years. How do you feel about that? Like just that alone of possibly being the lead program, arguably, not definitively, but arguably.
If you go for sustained success, right? The tip of the hat always has to go to Mike Gundy. When you go to longevity, you have to tip your hat there as well. It makes a lot of sense. We're the 10th winningest program in Power 5 football over the last 10 years, right? There's a reason, but we're lacking what a Utah has. I'm pretty sure Utah and Oklahoma State are within one win of each other. I think Gundy has one win. And there's a lot of similarities between Kyle Whittingham and himself. They've both been there 18, 19 years, correct? Right? So I think from a wins perspective, it should be Oklahoma State or Utah. But yeah, realistically, we're right there on the sideline. Up until Colorado joining, we were the closest sidelines in all of the Big 12. We are legitimately right on top of you. The atmosphere is phenomenal. We have one of the greatest homecomings in all of football. And just like I said in the beginning, guys, we're as excited as everybody else to be in the Big 12 because, everybody knows the case of the Big 12. We almost fell apart 2 years ago. We almost fell apart before that. We almost fell apart back when A&M and Mizzou and Colorado left the first go round along with Nebraska. You know what I mean? Like the Big 12 has gone from 1907 through now up and down and up and down and up and down and grabbing from here. So the solidification process that Brett Yormark has been able to pull off, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And the brand of football, maybe it doesn't matter quite as much as the SEC, right? You hear that all the time, but it does matter more. It does matter more in the Pac-12. The football side of things matters more, and you guys will be able to sense that. You'll be able to feel it because it's just I don't know, it's a little bit different.
Yep, go ahead. I was going to say one thing on top of that if I can, then I'll back up here. I don't think it matters so much the perception of brands in the Big 12. What's going to matter is how it comes across on TV. And with so much competitiveness across the words, those are going to be good games to watch. So like when I can have multiple games that I'm watching on TV, I am an Iowa guy, but I'm going to be looking at the Big 12 as my secondary and games to kind of switch to watch a game that I know is probably going to be a better competition. It's going to be close. It's going to be down to the wire. Whereas a lot of times in these big conferences, we talk about these big games and these big teams, but half of those games are blowouts. They're, they're okay. But that's what I'm kind of looking forward to this conference for is just every week, every game that's on, you're not really sure who's going to win. Could be down to the wire. Who's going to be the big team this year? Like TCU last year. No one had them predicted to do anything.
Yep.
And yet they were one step away from winning it all. So I pretty much see that for any school in this conference. So that's going to be pretty exciting.
Somebody needs to step up. We have to have a juggernaut in this conference, guys. The Pac-12 hasn't had a juggernaut for the last 8 years, and look what's happened. No playoff berths, right? And we've kind of fallen on hard times. It's a fun brand of football, but it's not good nationally. You need a team to dominate this conference. And I just hope somebody emerges and becomes that. And it looks like, there's some candidates. UCF is really a candidate, guys, really, to step up and just totally start dominating one day here in the next 5-10 years. Utah, Oklahoma State, TCU, Tech. I mean, you've got a lot. K-State. But somebody needs to step up. We can't just be all in the mediocre range. We have to have a juggernaut in the conference.
So have you guys heard the allegory of the fast runner and the slow runner to first base? So a coach is asked, who would they take in a draft? The guy who runs to first base the fastest with the best form, or to the guy who runs the first base a split second behind the fastest guy, but he has the worst form? Which one of those are you going to draft?
This is your question. If you're the guy over here looking like Clark Kent, all right, you answer this one.
You want me to answer my own allegory? Well, that didn't work out so well.
I would imagine you're being tricksy here. So I'd imagine the guy.
I'm not being tricksy. You want to hire the one that has the least form, because you can train somebody to run better form.
Yeah.
And that allegory goes to all the schools who haven't had P5 money for the last forever. And so that would be your newest entries. And that would be your BYU. That would be your UCF. Without all the facilities, without all the additional money and exposure, those are the ones that have the highest upside, because they're already doing well. Now you add this just like Utah did. Utah flexed after they came in because they put in 3, 4, 5 years, right? That was when everything started to turn. But right now, you already got guys that are at a high level. So you're going to have a much better competition at the top, and yet at the backside, you're going to have much better competition for people trying to climb up.
Hey,
can I ask you guys a question on that real quick?
Oh, go ahead.
Sure.
Oh, real quick on that part, the point that Wildwood made. Do you guys really want that, though? Do you really want one school that comes in and is just dominant? Or do you want it
I don't.
like every year to be
right.
a different program, not quite sure? That's what I've never really been a Big 12 fan, but now I kind of am. And it's not because I want to see one program come in and dominate. It's because I want to see it be a different one every season. I want to see, these programs come up and shock some people. Everyone thinks you're not going to win big games against the Big 10 or the SEC. I say, why not?
I love it. I agree, actually. And what do you think about this? Right? Tell me if you buy this. At least you're going to have, your big boys in the Big 10, big boys in the SEC. What if you have 7 Big 12 title holders in the next decade, but we play for 6 national titles? Right? What if as long as we're in that major conversation, I don't think that parity is actually a bad thing. I think from a marketing standpoint, that could actually benefit the Big 12. If 1 year Baylor's in it, 1 year TCU, and 1 year it's Utah, 1 year it's BYU, one year it's K-State. As long as you're there and we're chipping at the door of the Big 10, I mean, would you take that? Would you take that as a good?
Take that. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like I'm a little sullen over here based on the PAC's experience, because I'm thinking to myself, if USC had dominated over the last decade and gone to multiple playoffs and stuff, would the PAC even have disbanded? Would USC be leaving, or would the PAC be stronger than ever financially? So
yes.
I mean, USC, if they would have dominated and made a 10-year run, the PAC would still be around.
Because it's not about that, really. It's about viewership. It's about, would that get more viewership from down there? Some. But the ratings were so much lower for the PAC because it was stuck in the West.
Yeah,
because they were getting later time zones. And I get it. While you're in there and you're like, why didn't we get this? It's really not personal at all. It's not. I mean, it's a great organization. It was a great organization of great universities, with lots of people who love and care about them. But football viewership out there just maybe not quite as much, and people don't realize it, but for as large as the West is, there's not as much population out there, and there's not as much viewership, and it just worked against the conference. And it's hard to try to say that to folks who, have a lot of love for that and for the past of it and the pageantry, but it was just a bad hand that you're dealt at the poker table, and there's really not much you could have done with that hand to make it come out differently. I know that's kind of crazy, but that's what I was like doing, the long-term projection of where things are going. It's not based upon how teams are doing on the field. So I really think that this is probably the best situation that could have happened because it happened so quickly. And while it might feel painful, the fact that it happened so quickly, it's just like tearing off the Band-Aid, just rip off the scab and just deal with it and move on and get on with business at hand. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I don't think any type of results would have made a difference.
So even if USC had dominated, it wouldn't have changed the game. That's a good point.
I don't think so. I don't think so because, well, I think it's a fair point. I guess I can't necessarily outright rule it out. The problem is that everything's changed in the media markets. Everything has changed. It's not really about one school dominating a conference anymore. It's where do you want to put your best brands? And those are all going together and consolidating into 2 and 3 conferences. So the biggest deal against the Pac-12, that everybody knows, was the time zone. It was just hard to compete. You couldn't do those other early games. You would schedule an early game, and yet you were up against the SEC 1 or 2. It was almost impossible to break through. So really quick before I get to this super chat from Blake, I want to encourage everybody to subscribe. Make sure you follow everybody that's on this channel right now. Cody Stovall, Locked On Oklahoma State, is here with us, and really appreciate him being here. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment or suggestion, and you can join the channel. And I'm going to share this really quick so everybody knows what I mean by join, because it's really obnoxious the way that it goes. But the only way that you can join these YouTube channels is there's this join button right here in the middle, and you have to hit it. And I wish it was big and bright and bold, and they don't let us adjust that. So if you want to join the channel and become a subscriber and have your comments read on most other days when we have shows, we have a lot more interaction with people watching. This one is going to sort of be crazy because we're doing so many hosts. But that's what we're looking for in the future. I'm going to let Cody take this next question. Blake Phillips says, thoughts on San Diego State smoke? Good for Mexico market.
If we wouldn't have got the 4 corner schools, then yeah, absolutely. But I do think that this is kind of pushing that out of the fray. If you were going to get pushback from one of the Pac-12 schools, and let's say you got 3 of the 4 corner schools, then all day, every day, I would have taken San Diego State in a heartbeat. But if we're pushing the goalpost, right, not quite Pac-12 style, but just enough on adding anybody else like a UConn, because we see the turmoil that the ACC's in, I don't see it, right? I just don't see San Diego State. Now, I do think the Pac-12 survives. Obviously, they won't keep the acronym Pac-12, doubtful, but they're going to have a few teams left over that is still going to carry a little bit of a name, so maybe they head down that road.
Anybody else want to touch on that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I would love San Diego State in the Big 12. Maybe that's for selfish reasons for the 4 corners, not just Utah, but there's so much recruiting that happens in SoCal. It would be excellent to keep that pipeline going and have a game in Southern California and fight for the recruits with, the new West Coast Big Ten teams. So I think having that would be awesome. That would be great. For Arizona State would be really pleased with that too. But that's why I'm supportive, because Utah, hits recruiting hard in Southern California. So keeping that open would be big.
People here in Arizona love them some San Diego. Yeah. So if you're looking for people in the conference who would like that, you're going to look at the Arizona folks. San Diego is a beautiful place, beautiful weather. I don't know if it helps the Mexican push, but I mean, location-wise, you'd kind of think that if anyone could help with that on the side of the border, it'd be them. What they do have that I like them for later rounds of expansion, number one is their stadium. They have a newer stadium. They might need to work on some shielding for the sun, but it's San Diego. It's not incredibly hot there, but it's a very, very beautiful stadium. It basically outdoes Oregon State and Washington State stadiums if you're looking at them in comparison of who you want, because you're not looking for one of these teams to come in and light up the league. You just want them to be a good location and to be part of it. And I think San Diego State fits all those bills. Like you're saying, location in Southern California. So if you have recruits down there, they could drive down there and see a game. I really do like them for a later expansion team.
I appreciate that. Here's another one that, and I think we've already discussed this, but if anybody wants to add to it, Big 12 depth will prevent a lead program from our web. Thanks, our web, for that super chat. I really appreciate it. You guys, I realize we were disagreeing with you. It wasn't we were being disagreeable. It's just I think you come from a different experience, right? You're coming from a conference that didn't really have a lead dog. Utah tried to step up and do that and kind of got burned because the other ones, the ones that have been there longer, just picked up stakes and left. Do you want to add anything?
Something that's shocking here is actually I've reconsidered my thoughts and I agree with you guys.
Oh.
Yeah, I know that might not be good. But you know
we
what?
weren't trying to convince you
No,
necessarily.
it was Immaculate made a compelling argument. You could look at the SEC guys. The SEC
Yeah.
has parity. I mean, elite parity, and if that's what we can have, that's great. But the Pac-12, the viewership probably was the downfall. I do agree with that. So let's do it. Let's have parity and get to the playoff and win a bunch of titles. So Baylor, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Utah.
That's
Anyone
big of you. That's a tough pill to swallow. That's a tough pill to swallow to say we really didn't have the odds to win that battle.
Everybody but BYU. That's the way it goes for Wild Ute. All right. Another super chat from Country Roads. Thanks for being here, Country Roads. It's good to see you. With a $10 super chat, he says, with an automatic bid to the playoff, you don't need a juggernaut. I think we all agree to that. Need exciting games and competitive parity. And I don't think it's parody, by the way. It's parity, but that's okay. This is Cody Stovall typing. UCF will struggle when they play a tougher schedule and sustain injuries during the season. My biggest idea, and I've said this from the very beginning since the Four Corners was announced last summer, I think UCF's biggest challenge is going to be travel. Schools that come out of Florida that head west generally don't do well. Florida, I think, is going to run into a buzzsaw at Utah in 3 weeks. I mean, I don't even think that could be a boat race score. Because Utah wants revenge so bad of what happened last year. Florida could come out of there something like 45-6, or it could be just an ugly, ugly game. And I think you're going to see that the more games UCF comes east. What do you guys think about that? West.
Depends upon the start time. If it's a later start time, then I don't think it affects them as much. But if it's some reason it's an earlier start time in the West for them, then that's going to be pretty brutal on the time clock.
Hey man, I've already put the hooting and hollering out there that I think Utah will beat Florida, then turn around and lose a nail biter.
I believe that too. Yep, I think that's true too.
Could happen.
It's too bad you don't have Baylor and Florida back to back. That would have been incredible at home.
Oh yeah,
that would have been the best open ever.
Here's the caveat to that though. There's 2 extra days to prepare for the game. The Florida game's on a Thursday night, so there's nine days essentially in between, 8 or 9 days. I don't know if that gets us there. It's going to be a tough game.
Waco and 110 degrees and hot wind.
Better get used to it. That's a conference game, guys.
Yeah, but it's going to be thick air, lower, and I don't know.
Hey, speaking of UCF travel again, I think that the ACC is going to disband, and I think that there's going to be ACC schools in the Big 12 in 2024. So I don't think it's going to be much of an issue.
Yep.
You think it's going to go big?
What's the odds on this happening? I'm serious about that.
I think he's dead on.
I think he's strong, and you could look at this and you could draw some comparisons to how the Pac went. Now, to be respectful to any of our ACC folks that are out there watching right now, I'm going to say it's not a guaranteed thing, but prepare yourself maybe for some bad news coming in future times. As far as if it goes for the whole thing, I don't think it's going to go like the Pac that the whole thing is going to go, but I do believe that it's going to be quite a few teams by the end of it. So,
the dam cracked, right, in the Big 12, right? Well, actually with the Big 10 when they took USC and UCLA, right? And then the dam burst wide open with Colorado. The only thing holding the dam on that side of the country is Florida State. If Florida State thinks they got the dollar bills, y'all, to get out of whatever they're in, the ACC's Dunsky. So I actually think Ute is 100% on something. I'd say like 2025, but I think he's pretty on. If Florida State moves, the dominoes on that side of the country begin to fall, and that Power 3 thing comes back into fruition.
There's so much smoke around FSU. I don't know how it couldn't be right, honestly. There's just so much from every area.
Well, we know from VC Knoll, right? Yeah. And we know from our big partner, Big Papa East, that both those guys have been saying for 2 weeks now, Florida State's not just smoke, it is fire. It is a 4-alarm fire. They're going to have fire trucks coming all over. The ACC's trying to put that thing out. This news about Cal and Stanford is to tamp that down some. They're like, okay, fine. We don't need, this. It was this stupid talk. Like, we don't need USC and UCLA. Who cares? Let them go. We'll just backfill, right? I mean, you can't replace some of these programs. So
how does that make any sense, guys? Cal and Stanford to the ACC?
It doesn't. They just don't want to play with Oregon State and Washington State and New Mexico.
I could tell you, but that's so far in advance that we're kind of getting way too ahead.
Yeah, that's a different show. We don't want to get Immaculate going. We won't be able to.
You don't want to go down that hole right now because that'll eat up into your time clock way too much.
Right, I agree with that.
But there is some thought on that, but it's in a different direction.
Varlin Angel 1811. Nice to see you, Varlin. Good to have you here.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I hope if you're new to the show, please subscribe. And if you want your comment read, please give us a super chat. I'm getting to those as they come up. He says, Wild Ute, I pulled for Florida last year. I did too, Varlin. But you're family now, so I'll be cheering for the Utes this year. Wow, never thought I'd say that. Lol. Good luck and welcome to the Big 12.
Keep
Will
that
you
up
be
for a
cheering
second.
for the Utes there,
Keep that up for
Dahmer?
a second. Guys, this is unorthodox, but I'm so excited about the Big 12 that actually want to pop
Let's
a
go!
bottle of champagne right here.
Pop that sucker up, man.
If you have a beer, if you have a non-alcoholic beer, if you've got a coffee, a water, an invisible drink,
I've
let's
got water.
pop this thing and cheers and toast because we're in the Big 12 together. We're going to rule the world.
All right.
Here we go.
I dig it.
Let's go. Get it done.
That one's for you, Vorlin.
I think it's Barlin, but that's okay. Anybody else
Barlin.
want to say anything about this comment? I will just say, growing up, when Utah was playing BYU, that was the only time I cheered against them. I wanted Utah to, because when Utah played well and then BYU would play them at the end of the year, when they beat them, that would make BYU higher, right? And that's the process in a conference. If you're out of conference, I realize there's some people, especially like T-Rex at Baylor, who will never, ever cheer for anybody else in the Big 12, no matter the circumstance. I disagreed with him on that. I think if we support each other out of conference, but then we eat each other alive in conference, that's the way it should be. And this is going to be tough this year for me to cheer for Utah. I'm probably not going to do that, but going forward,
that's what I was asking. Like, I'm not sure I see that happening just
not this year. No,
maybe not just yet.
Not this year.
I
Anybody
would
else
say
wanna add to that?
probably. I would say 85% of Big 12 fans are going to cheer for 85% of the Big 12. It is fun, man. It is fun. It's a little bit different, and every single time any of the new four or the new four or the about to be maybe ACC new four, anytime one of those teams play somebody from the Big 10 or the SEC, better believe most of us are going to be rocking for the Big 12, just the way it is.
Yep, I 100% agree.
Stay on that real quick. Right now, the conference as a whole is pretty new. Even though the Big 12 is not new, the whole makeup of it is very new. Your rivalries going forward right now, we don't really know who they're going to be right now. I mean, some, BYU, Utah, Kansas State. There's some that are obvious. But the ones that come from competition and the ones who are pushing for the titles, we don't really know what those are yet.
Right.
And so those are going to be the fun ones to see. Whereas right now everyone's hunky-dory, hugging and out, but who knows? Utah and Oklahoma State might become just bitter rivals after a couple of contested championships, and you guys maybe couldn't stand to be on the same stream together in a few years. Who knows?
It could happen, Cody.
But
That's true.
It's an unwritten future, and it's just wide open.
It is Texas Tech. It's so clear in my mind. Texas Tech and Utah. There's going to be some bad blood.
It's just something there.
There's something there.
I got another super chat here from Country Roads. Again, thank you, super chat, Country Roads. Appreciate it. 4 hours on a bus or 4 hours on a charter plane, not a huge distance for football teams. Travel gets too much attention. I would agree with that.
Hold on. The only reason that travel does matter is if you're part of the injury report and you have to do a little bit of extra work. The earlier you get there, the earlier you can get that extra work in, so that way you can have the best chance of playing in the game. Other than that, travel does get a little bit of extra hoopla. But, yeah, dude, an extra couple of hours for a cryo on an ankle, it does go a long way. It can matter to some degree. So travel played up, yes. Can it matter? It does matter for the guys that are just tweaking injuries left and right.
I think that's a fair point. So,
yeah.
Cody, I got another guest coming on. I think Drake is going to be joining us from Locked On Baylor and now Locked On Big 12, which we're really glad that he's getting that promotion. So I'm going to give you the last minute here or so. What do you want to tell everybody about Oklahoma State and this new Big 12?
Well, hey, guys, thank you very much for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. I'm happy, as you guys already know. The thing I would say about Oklahoma State is watch the Cowboys this season. We need to rebound. last year was the worst year since 2005, right? And that was a year where Gundy came in and kind of cleaned house and got rid of some guys that were quote unquote problems, so on and so forth. So I do not see Oklahoma State going back under 7 wins in the near future. It hasn't happened. The over-under is 6.5. So if you're out there and you like making a little bit of money, go bet the over on Oklahoma State, because Mike Gundy could possibly win 7 games running backwards. And we know that because we watched this run backwards quite a bit last season. And we won 7 games.
Cody, I've got a question for you.
I have an answer for you.
30 seconds. Give him 30 seconds. Here we
Oklahoma
go.
State, are you going to beat OU this year? Final year of the Red River?
Yes, because yes,
Bedlam, sorry.
yes,
Bedlam,
dag nabbit, I'm gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
You bet.
This is in Stillwater.
Good for you.
There you go. It's in Stillwater, and
Oh,
the
there you
last time we thought it was the last one ever in Stillwater, it worked out pretty well for us, and we shut down the eventual Heisman Trophy winning quarterback.
Is it 91, 19, and 7, the record
Yeah.
in that Bedlam series? Oh,
Yeah.
man. A perfect
That's
record.
hard.
Just slammed you.
That's barely a rivalry, to be honest.
It's rough. It is
Yeah.
rough, but you know what? They're going to talk about the last one the most, so we better get it done.
That's
There
right.
you go. That's
Right.
it. That's the right attitude. Well, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Locked on Oklahoma
Absolutely.
State, Cody Stovall. Everybody, please subscribe to his channel and watch him on YouTube. He's on quite often, and I really recommend you do that. And thanks for being here, Cody, being part of the family.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Welcome to the conference, fellas. God bless. Go Pokes. See y'all later.
We'll
Take
see
care,
you
man.
later. Bye-bye.
Have a good one, man.
All right, and we're going machine gun style to Drake.
Hey,
C.
what's
Toll.
up,
There
Drake?
he is.
Come
Now,
on,
Drake-
guys. Look, remote.
That is definitely not Baylor.
No, remote right now. I had the opportunity to record from a Starbucks in Anchorage, and I said, look, the forest is way better. So if a moose or a bear is from behind, you're my only outlet here. You got to let me know when it comes about.
Okay, all right. So give us your first read of this new Big 12.
Dude, I couldn't be more excited. And I'll be honest, originally Utah fans pissed me off more than anybody else. I could not believe how the Big 12, thought it was so interesting too, the Big 12 casts out this life raft, right? Titanic's going down, Big 12 casts a life raft, and Utah says, I'm not getting on because BYU is driving. They're going to drown with the ship, it felt like. But now, as everything's come together, and I've gotten to know more Utah fans in the last week, it's become a lot better. I'm more at peace with the Utah decision. Arizona State, let's be honest about it. Two New Year's Six Bowls combined for those schools. Baylor and Oklahoma State and TCU are going to pick up some wins against those squads. In Colorado, maybe the same. And so I'm okay with that part. But at the same time, 4 great brands. 4 great brands. You cannot be upset with that, especially when 2 years ago you thought the Big 12 was done for. And now it's one of the strongest conferences in college athletics. I can't be upset.
Yeah. So, Drake, who do you think is going to be Baylor's rival in this new Big 12?
That's the big issue with this whole thing, is that Baylor and BYU could have been a really strong rivalry, and it can't now. There's no way to have an A1 and an A2. You kind of get that. You get a great glimpse of it with Michigan and Ohio State. That is the premier rivalry. Michigan State's a rivalry. People just don't care near as much. It's not touted as one of the top 20 rivalries in college athletics. So for Baylor, if you're going to pick out a rival, has to be TCU. At the same time, I don't see a top 15 rivalry in college athletics outside of BYU Utah. Bringing in Utah brings in one of the stronger, bigger rivalries in college football. And that, I think, is going to be a saving grace to the BYU of the Big 12, I should say, and keep it relevant.
Yeah, probably BYU too. We'll save you, Bomber.
We don't need saving. Don't even get started there. Don't even get started. So Drake, tell us a little bit about this new venture you're going on, this new Locked On Big 12, and what that's going to mean for your coverage.
Yeah, guys. I mean, I was a huge fan of Josh Neighbors and what he did with Locked On Big 12 for a while over there. And at the same time, 3 months after that show was shut down, to get tabbed to come host, I could only say yes. and was over the moon, to the point where I requested pretty quickly to no longer host Locked On Baylor, to put full focus onto the Big 12. And Nathan, I'll call you out over most to say that you were a big driving factor in that, to say, look, there's a outlet to cover the conference right now. So Mafia, credit to you and what you've been able to do to help build a crew of people who are passionate Big 12 fans, to prove that this conference needs individual media members, people who cover the league overall. And so knowing that, I had to jump all over it. So once the offer was there, I was in. And so 5 days a week, every day I'll be posting 2 to 3 videos about the Big 12. So if you want, wall-to-wall Big 12 coverage, live videos, shorts, you name it, from Twitter to YouTube, I'll be there. And you won't always like me. I can promise you that. I can promise you. You won't always like me. If you're a Texas and Oklahoma fan especially, I'm going to tick some people off. But that's what I'm here for. I mean, I'm going to give you really honest, raw opinions. And law of averages, right? 16 teams. Some have to be below average. Some have to be above. And some have to be right at it. And I'm going to call it like it is. And again, it's going to make some folks mad, but that's the way that this thing goes.
Appreciate that. Like, seriously. So what do you think about Oregon State and San Diego State as potential additions to the conference?
Yeah, when I really think about it, if the Big 12 thought about adding Oregon State and San Diego State, I think it'd be idiotic. I mean, what? I just cannot believe that we're having this conversation right now. The Big 12 is a business, not a life raft. That's what I keep saying. The Big 12 is a business, not a life raft. At some point, you've got to stop. I think 16 is a comfortable place to stop, unless unless something really falls through with Florida State and they have to call you. It's not going to happen. But if that becomes that'd be the only scenario in which the Big 12 should go past 16. And here's why: if you are creating or curating, I should say, a city council or a board of regents, you want half of your membership to be brand new. Do you want half the people calling the shots to be brand new? Do you want more than half calling the shots to be brand new? Of course not. So 8 and 8 is already uncomfortable. When you have 10 new teams with 8 returning teams, I don't like it. You can't, and especially if those 2 new teams are San Diego State and Oregon State. We know football pushes the needle. Football pushes the needle. San Diego State and Oregon State just don't have it enough to make it worth it.
Gotcha. So even at a sharply reduced payout stuff, it'd still be the same type of idea?
To me, with the sharply reduced payout, which I like that idea, right? You say, hey, you can come in, but we're not going to make Oklahoma State or BYU suffer because of it. And if that's the case, you have the national champion in college basketball knocking on your door.
Yeah.
I know. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think UConn will play in the Big 12 in the next 5 years. I don't. But I would rather have UConn than San Diego State right now. I would, from a brand standpoint nationally. I'd go complete East Coast rather than going San Diego State, just because I think there are some other options on the West Coast that I would put before San Diego State. Obviously, Stanford's a great Olympic sports school. If you want a team that's going to compete for the Director's Cup, which I think is not a great metric over how good your athletics department is, but if you want a team that can compete and win the Big 12 or Director's Cup, you call Stanford and say, look, we'll give you a lifeline. You don't call San Diego State for that.
It's really interesting, the thought, the consistency and alignment amongst members. Because it kind of feels right now, since it's so new, like there might be people, like the Utes fans and stuff that want San Diego State, and West Virginia fans might want UConn. So, yeah, I think that you're right on the money there with trying to get more consistency and trying to understand each other and really tighten the knit right now with the existing members, these 16 right here. So you might be onto something.
Yeah, Mafia, what do you think? I mean, being a BYU, being a new team in this 16, are you comfortable with the newbies outnumbering the hateful 8 as they've been dubbed?
Yeah.
No, I would prefer it stopped. The problem is we got to eat. It's eat or be eaten right now. And if the ACC blows up, it's going to have to happen. We're going to have to pick up some schools. But I don't think what's the big rush? It won't. This is the thing with UConn and San Diego State and Washington State and Oregon State. They're going to be there. So if we want them later, we can always go and get them. Who else is going to pick them up, right? They're really orphans, and it sucks. It really sucks. I like every one of those programs. I just don't think there's no reason we need to be a charity. We already found out that Utah and ASU came in at a reduced figure, meaning everybody else had to cut their skim a little bit, which is rough. That was kind of a tough thing to take in. That meant, one, that Utah and ASU weren't as valuable as they thought they were because the partners weren't going to pony up everything for them. And two, it meant that everybody else was going to have to take a little bit of pain. Like we had to bring in BYU, UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati. And so I would prefer that we stayed strong. And if we went to 20, it was with ACC schools, because those schools will get funding because everybody's watching football on the East Coast.
So we had some conflicting reports that came out that Utah and Arizona State weren't going to get the full pay and that everyone else had to chip out. And then those reports were refuted. So
I didn't hear the refusions. If you have a, send me the link and I'll
have to find it back on Twitter. There was I don't remember that. I'll look for it. We'll talk to it again. But I think
there were several reports that I read today that said that they came in at some percentage lower. I think it was only $1 million or $2 million per team, but it was not 100%. Now they're getting a full boat, right? Yeah. They're coming in at full funding. But that just means that every other school has to subsidize that a little.
Was that Fox that didn't pay full share?
I'm trying to remember who it was.
Well, yes, they had a pro rata, right?
It did. I think it was Fox. It would have had to have been Fox.
Yes. Gosh, guys, I hate Fox. Screw Fox right now. This guy sucks so bad. They treat the youth horrible. Anyway,
that is,
and you guys thought they were loving you, right? We heard Mo and Vision came on for a month and a half telling us that the Utah was getting all this love. ASU had just gotten their AAU accreditation, so everybody had this expectation in their head. This just shows you how psycho this entire process was. They come in and everybody thinks that they're high, and then we find out later that well, maybe. There wasn't the energy that was being generated by the people that were sort of trying to gin up everything below it. And I think that's kind of what has come back to sort of haunt the 4 schools coming in to the Big 12, is that even though they're properties, they're not in demand properties. Those properties were Washington and Oregon. Everybody knew it all along, and everything else was white noise.
I do think that some of those schools might get second looks in the future. And that's something the Big 12 might need to face in the future, and to try to create something here that makes those schools not want to go. And,
right.
I think with your Mark, with some of his ways of trying to make money, it's interesting when you bring up UConn coming sooner than later, and maybe he wants to push the basketball thing sooner than later to get everyone that little bit of extra chunk towards what everyone else is getting. So you say, you know what, we're doing just fine here. We're just shy of what you're making, and we would rather be in this where we have an equal playing field and we have a shot to actually go for things, rather than coming into your conference and having the Alabamas and the Georgias stomp on you, or the Ohio States and the Michigans and the USC stomp on you. Whereas I think that's going to be a question that Big 12 schools really have to ask themselves in the future. And that's your Mark's initiative right now, is to cut the difference in pay by maybe half. However he can do that, just so that folks think that we don't need that extra chunk in order to be part of that because we like this. And so
let's define what money actually means, though. Money is a measuring stick, right? We talked about it for months. Money isn't the goal.
It's a tool.
The goal is exposure and access. You want exposure to the world. That means you're over the air broadcasting and whoever your partners are, and you need access to the college football playoff, whatever that means. Whether that's predefined, per conference designations of how many teams come in, or just general access. If your best teams play well, they're in. Yes. And those are the things that matter. Money is just a measuring stick. I mean, we all know these athletic departments a lot of times don't even make money.
But those things that you're listing, the Big 12 is not behind in. They're not behind in exposure. They never.
But it's perception, though. It's perception, though. Matt.
Sure, and that's what I'm saying. But I look at money as a tool, and what you can do with that tool. And as long as you have enough to where you can do everything that they're doing, then you're good. And if this conference provides you the opportunity to go and actually be more successful and to then make more of that money, that tool from that success, then that's actually the better choice for you as a school. And so that's my thing just for Big 12 folks, is like, this is an amazing moment, and build from it and go forward from it and build this conference in a way that you probably never thought was possible. Speaking to you as a Baylor folk, here. These guys aren't going to quite get what you guys have gone through. And now after going through all that, you guys are just half the conference. It is a very interesting point you bring up, that you don't want to go past that as of yet, because that definitely changes the identity of the conference and what you guys have gone through for the past decade or so.
Yeah, it'd be a brand new dynamic. I mean, the BYUs, as much respect as I have for BYU, weren't here 12 years ago when it felt like Missouri leaving, Colorado leaving, Nebraska as well. A&M, that was it. You know, there was a chance that Baylor was going to defunct to a much smaller league and fall to the wayside. They were so bad in football, it just made sense that would be what happened. And then 2 years ago, you know, when Oklahoma State and TCU are beating down the door Texas Tech of the Pac-12, hoping to get in, which I think is so ironic, getting into this level of expansion, that those teams 2 years ago wanted into the Pac-12, which is now effectively defunct. So absolutely. And I think that's part of the 8. Those 8 knew what it was like to survive the last 2 rounds of alignment. And so you want there to be a little bit of respect for that. And I think exposure too. Look, if I get a job offer at ESPN or ESPN Omaha, 7:30, right, for $55,000, or the ticket in Dallas for $45,000, absolutely see you in Dallas, right?
Yes.
The exposure of being at the ticket in Dallas is going to make that $10,000 back, you know, based on my career for the next 5 years, 10 years, than it would being out of Omaha. Not that Omaha is a bad market at all. The more money is great, but the exposure is where you need it. Money's a fun little thing to throw around, that word, but we say money. I'm never seeing that dollar, right? The student athletes, for the most part, aren't seeing that dollar. That's something that I think a lot of Big 12 fans have a good understanding of, where SEC fans and Big 10 fans don't. They say, oh, we have more money. What does that mean for you? The Ohio State fan, what does that mean for you? I think it's less than they really expect.
I think that's a great point.
Go ahead, yeah. So taking a side step, would you be supportive of adding basketball only members in Gonzaga and UConn?
No. And here's where you cross over into the general fan standpoint. From general fanhood, from someone who liked college athletics, I don't like that Notre Dame is 1 foot in, 1 foot out from a conference standpoint. I don't want that with the Big 12. I want there to be zero outside of swimming and wrestling. You can have it there because of necessity, but in basketball, I don't think it's necessary. When you talk about what is necessary in this league, you don't need it. It is not a need to take a chance on a UConn or a Gonzaga if you're just going to ask for them in basketball. I think the Big 12 is in a fine spot without that. So you, especially right now, you've already added 50% of your teams are new. I don't take that step.
Gotcha. Now going to the ACC, if it disbands, what's your preferred pecking order? Assuming that Florida State's off the board, that Miami's off the board,
right?
UNC's off the board, and Clemson. Those 4 off the board.
My hope is that a team like a Virginia, which I liken to a UNC in a lot of ways, somebody with that big of a brand is going to be left off. Someone's going to be forgotten or not be good enough at negotiation to get into the Big Ten or the SEC. It's going to happen. And in that case, I think the Big Ten takes at least one prominent brand in a Virginia Tech, a UNC possibly. That's a long shot. But again, we've seen how bad these universities can fumble in realignment, where presidents can say something, where an AD can say something that just tanks you. So I think one of those teams makes one misstep that puts them in the Big 12 for the benefit of the Big 12. And then when an NC State is lying there, or a Pitt, I'm a big rivalry guy. If you're going to put butts in seats, you need rivalries, which is why adding Utah is so huge. Pitt is who you go after, because Pitt, West Virginia, now here's your guaranteed sellout every year. Bar none, every year you're going to sell this game out. I love the idea of Pitt. I think Louisville's a fun option. I don't know if fun pushes the needle, but it seems like that's where the Big 12 has gone. It is less of a, hey, you need to be a prominent brand in college athletics, and more of, you need to be blue collar. That's one thing that I say all Big 12 teams or Big 16 teams have in common. They have been forgotten at one point in time or another. They've been left out of the Big Ten, the SEC, and they are blue collar because of it. which to me is entertaining in itself.
Yeah,
I agree 100%. There's this comment from Country Roads, another super chat. He says, negotiating basketball separately has potential boost to Big 12 revenues, 10 to 20% overall. UConn and Gonzaga have value that is unrecognized. You just tipped on this, and this is for any of you, really. At the end of the day, not now, as we've maybe discussed and sorted out, but in 5 years after we've gone past 2026, as we get to our next our next media deals, it does UConn and San Diego State, and for that matter, Washington State and Oregon State, are they more attractive options at a less valuation, but you can bring them in as properties?
Yeah, I think so. I think that like Oregon State, San Diego State, they're attractive at a lesser value. I mean, the big question is though, like, what's the math on that, right? If it's a 7-year deal, 5-year deal, and they're taking half revenue shares for that time, that's fine for the 5 to 7. But then after that, they're getting a full share, right? With everybody else. Like, so you have to do a lot of cost benefit analysis to make sure those numbers work.
And do we think the splitting off of basketball will make a difference to you?
Splitting off basketball, we've talked about that before. That's an interesting idea. I have a hard time seeing that make more money because it's bundled in right now. I mean, I don't know how you can make more money by splitting football and basketball because it's all in one big pie right now, right? And what big pie you're selling off and everything. I mean, is there going to be a market just for the basketball rights? Maybe. That's the question to ask. Is there a separate market just for the basketball rights? Can you get more media partners just for the basketball side that you're not getting right now? And if you can find that, then maybe you can make some more money. But it's going to be massive. It won't be massive.
I actually think that's been something that ESPN probably wanted to do with the ACC for a long time. I think they wanted to kind of carry that over from the Big East. Remember, ESPN is up there in the Northeast, and basketball is king in the Northeast. It's not football. So you got to remember they have kind of that perspective, and they're the ones paying the bills. So if they're willing to pay for that, if they're willing to take the ACC network and bring it over to the Big 12, and they want to put basketball on that, and they want to get the Big 12 network into New York and that upper area, I say there's some value to it. How much? I have no idea. This is a kind of a new thing, but I do believe that Yormark probably has some type of numbers in front of him based upon his conversations there. So is there value in it? I would say yes. But you got to ask yourself is when. Because if you start bringing in those schools now and they have votes,
right?
Do they start using those votes to leverage how much you pay them in order for them to allow you to bring in other schools that you want for football? So if you're bringing them in sooner rather than later, you got to make sure they cannot be obstructive, because that's part of what the problem was in the Big East. So yeah, that'd be my biggest worry about sooner rather than later, is that they obstruct your football maneuvers, and that's definitely bad for business.
Right. Drake, I'm going to give you last word. I know you got to go. You're so popular. You have so many people wanting your time. You got to go. So go ahead and take a couple minutes here and just tell us what the way the world is, man.
I've got so many flies right now that want my time.
I keep watching for bears behind you.
Oh my gosh, dude. I fly out tonight. I've got to catch a flight right now, actually. So great call, Mafia. I'm headed to the airport to leave Alaska and get back to civilization. But yeah, I just to kind of close it all up, and even to divert a bit from that conversation, just put it general, I couldn't be more excited about where the Big 12 is. And I'm glad. I want to echo, if you're one of the hateful eight, you understand what this league is going through. You understand the thought of being a power, going from a Power 5 conference to irrelevant in college athletics a couple of years ago and just hoping, right? You saw what hope was. And while I would love to give solace to the 4 teams left of the Pac-12, I don't have too much of it in me right now. I'm sure I will down the road. But seeing the way that the Cals and the Stanfords treated the Baylors and Oklahoma States a few years ago, the rhetoric around bringing in Big 12 teams and how it would water down the Pac-12, I think there are still a lot of hateful eight people who are burned by that, who are upset with that. And to the new eight, I hope you understand where they come from, right? Why so many old Big 12 fans are upset with how the Pac-12 treated teams like TCU and Texas Tech. But for those that are in the conference, overjoyed. Even to have Utah fans that have been so rotten on Twitter for weeks, right? I now understand why BYU fans have the sentiment they do. I'm coming around on the Utah train a bit, but geez, man, if you guys could just be nice for a little bit, it'd make this so much easier.
Can't promise anything.
Right. Keep up with Locked On Big 12 and Mafia. Anytime you're live, I would love to be on. Locked On Big 12, I can promise you we're going to cover the Big 12 as close as anybody, and in a way that it isn't always exactly serious, but a way that gives you your daily fix of entertainment, excitement, and a bit of this conference. So excited to see where this league is going because it could have been defunct 2 years ago, and I'm going to catch a flight, but guys, always a pleasure.
Yep.
Travel safe. We appreciate it, Drake. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Sick 'em Bears,
All right,
and
we'll
just
see you
go
later.
Big 12.
They'll go Big 12. I love it. Well, we go from comedy to comedy.
Oh,
We
man.
got the man, Clint Foster, in the house representing his Texas Christian University.
Always.
You're coming up behind Drake, who is a tough act to follow, bro. So tell us what your first thought is about this new Big 28.
Big 28. Yeah, man. Well, it's frankly hilarious that now Utah is a part of this whole thing after all of the Twitter chicanery that we talked about the last time I was on with y'all. Both Utah and Arizona State seem to not want to be here so bad, but I love it. I think it's making a conference that's already fun and strong that much funner and that much stronger. Yeah. I can't wait to see where it goes. And I have kind of a backlog of video ideas. It's just, I started in-service this week for my high school teaching job. So I'm like, okay, I got to find times to make these videos and still like do my work with that.
Take care of business.
Actually getting paid for it.
You need to bring your classes into it. Make it extra credit. Stick around after class, and we're going to do a video and have them all be the different schools. That would be a lot of fun.
Clint, do your students know that you do these videos?
Do what?
Do your students know that you do these videos?
Oh, yeah. Several of them have found my channel organically. And it's a lot of times it's kids coming up from middle school. And they're like, oh, my God. Like, you're the guy who makes the TCU videos. I actually had a cousin recently. So I was at my sister's wedding this summer. And one of my cousins was talking about her son was like, oh, I'm just watching this guy who makes these videos. Like, I just love this guy. And she's like, that's your cousin, you know? He's like, what? So.
That is fantastic. So right now, everything's been reset. We're going into a strong season this fall. Big 12's looking great. You got new schools coming in, rivalries being revisited and stuff like that. What's your top of mind about this next 23-24 season?
Well, I've got the August overconfidence happening right now. I'm always really reasonable all throughout the offseason. I've tempered my expectations, and then August rolls around. I'm like, oh, we're going undefeated. It's happening. We're going to do it. But I mean, part of that is because I've heard a lot of really positive reports from practice. I haven't gotten to visit myself, but it sounds like TCU in particular has a lot of talent on this team, and if it's able to gel as it could, then things with our schedule, the way our schedule shakes out this year, could end up being having another fun year. But it's such a wide open conference, and that's what's so fun about it. You're not going to find a conference anywhere else. Like, sure, the tip top of the SEC is elite, right? There's 3 teams in the Big 10 that are elite. Everybody else is kind of trash. But there's not a conference like the Big 12 where from top to bottom, you've got such parity, and literally any team can go on a run any given year and win this dadgum thing. I think this year is going to be so fun because any of the top really like 7 teams in this conference have a legitimate chance to win the championship, I think. So should be really great.
Ute, I know you got things to ask.
Yeah, so Clint, who are you most excited to play out of all these new additions?
Oh, the new additions. Well, I'm excited for some travel opportunities personally. I'm really excited to be playing Utah and BYU again. I loved those games in the Mountain West. They were always fun, and we had a great rivalry, a 3-way rivalry, I felt like, at the top of that conference. I'm really looking forward to visiting Cincinnati. I think that could be a fun place to visit, and Colorado, because I didn't get to go to that game last year. I'm very excited about visiting Folsom Field. And I've been to Utah before. I've been to BYU before. I'm excited to check out Tucson, too. Yeah. I think that'll be a fun road trip. But, yeah, there's a lot of potential for rivalries. I cannot wait for the first time that Arizona State literally has to go to West Virginia, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. It's going to be a blast.
Make lots of fun there. Just so you know, Sergeant Pickles is calling out your UW top hat because they got one just like that, and it's a fantastic sailor hat, I think is what he's calling it here in the super chat. But I know I've seen the UW one. I've never seen the TCU one. So that's
talking about
cool.
this one.
There's
The yacht captain's hat.
No, it looks just like yours, except for it says UW on it. So.
Okay.
Hey, Bob, a question for you. Who are you
Yeah.
most excited to play this coming year and in 2024 too?
Oklahoma at home, second to last game, November. And I've said it before. I think it's a trap game for Oklahoma. Their last game, I can't remember who Oklahoma plays last, but
it's us.
Is it you guys? So
yeah.
They're going to be looking ahead to TCU, I think, and BYU and Provo. You know this, you as well as in Salt Lake in November. It's very hard to win here. It's hard to win those away games. And if you're coming here to the state of Utah in winter, it is not a fun trip. I
BYU
just tell everybody right now.
OU teams in the past.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and just as well, we've lost in Texas as well too, right? I mean, it goes both ways. Home field is really big, and I think that's a great question that we probably should have asked everybody, and maybe we'll have to do a panel again and say, what is the best home base? Because everybody's going to have good home stadiums. I think everybody could make an argument in the country, except for maybe the Arizonas,
Let me tell you what.
and that would be the best home stadium.
Oklahoma State is a fun place to visit as a fan. As a team, it sucks. Because
right.
my senior year, I was an equipment manager at TCU. My senior year was our first year in the Big 12. That stadium is so flippin' uncomfortable to play in as the visiting team because the sidelines are virtually non-existent.
Right.
You're all crammed in there, and the opposing fans are just on top of you, beating paddles on the side of the wall. It's obnoxious and it's horrible. So they have a very underrated home field advantage that I think goes overlooked by people who haven't been a part of the conference before.
They need to keep adding seats. If they had another 10,000 seats, the place would be doomsday.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty closed in as it is. Like, they keep the sound in. But Tech is also always crazy. It's hard to win in Lubbock. And Morgantown is the same way. Morgantown actually is very similar to Provo because I've experienced both as an equipment manager. And it's just, you're out in the hills. It's like very passionate fan base. And there's no burning couches in Provo, and there's less
no
moonshine.
Burning couches. No.
Considerably less moonshine. What's
what's
very,
the
very rowdy
craziest
atmospheres.
Wait, when you were an equipment manager, what was the craziest away game experience? Maybe you got hazed. Maybe something else happened to you. Where was it? What happened?
Craziest away. Oh, okay. I got one for you. My freshman year at Air Force, it was like -9 degrees. And Air Force sucks because they have this super duper long. I mean, thank you for your service. God bless the Air Force. Their stadium sucks because they have this ramp that is a mile long from where you have to unload the truck to get to the field, right? And there's no oxygen up there, so you're pushing trunks and moving equipment like gasping for air for like 2 miles and so factor in that there's like ice on the ground, right? In this game. And after this particular game, the showers like broke. So everybody was trying to, take a hot shower after the game. None of the players could shower.
Oh, my.
So by the time we finally got the truck loaded and the buses loaded, everyone was just like nasty and ripe. That was like the whole trip home.
And how many of your offensive and defensive linemen came out with knee injuries? That's all I want to know. The cut blocks at Air Force are it was like a walking wounded after every game. I remember those games. They were terrible.
Yeah, I feel like that was more an issue in 2005 because that was the first time we played them in conference. But it really wasn't. I mean, both teams just kind of beat up on each other in that game my freshman year. Yeah, I don't really remember them being super dirty while I was actually in school. But yeah.
Well, Utah and BYU know exactly what that pain's like. Hey, Immaculate, do you have any questions or anything?
I'm glad you called me. I didn't want to jump in on that because that was a great run there, but I just want to point out from an outside perspective of how cool it is to see the three of you here representing these schools being in a 3 future conference together. Because
true.
I'm kind of a little bit older here, obviously, and this rivalry of sorts back in the day was the one coming from the Big Ten, where you're just like, is it going to be Utah? Is it going to be TCU? And BYU is kind of always in that national picture. But of your guys' schools, I remember, like, against Wisconsin, TCU, and Utah had those as well. So to see your schools make it and to be here in the same conference to have a rivalry, I don't think people realize it. Like TCU and Utah, that's going to be rough.
Mm-hmm.
Like you guys don't want to lose to each other.
Mountain West days, there was a top 6-8 matchup, TCU and Utah, and it was on CBS Sports Network, guys.
Yeah,
CBS Sports Network. That was the Mountain West days.
Or versus.
The original versus, or the first Mountain West. You guys remember that Mountain West battle with the very first game on the Mountain West channel was BYU at Stanford, and it was like you were watching the mission to the moon. It was like you were all over like this. It was exactly like that. Oh, and you're going, wow, this is our new network. BYU and Utah and their TCU are going, what the hell's going on with this? This is nuts.
We've come a long way, brothers. We've come a long way.
I really appreciate that.
TCU. So it's going to be amazing playing you guys again. Like, it kind of feels like a long lost brother, TCU and stuff, from watching you. I was rooted for TCU.
You kind of want to call them the kings of the conference, right? Except they didn't win the conference championship. So what do we?
You got to bring that up right now.
Well, what do we call you? Oh, you got to get used to it. Here we go.
Hey, well, wait. We beat your conference champion. How's that? We're the Big Ten conference champion.
All right. Hey, we've got Jason Watson's coming in behind us, Hall of Fame college football, and Clint. I'm gonna let him share some time with you. He wants to say hey.
Right on.
All right, let's do it. Okay, Jason, you can't take all the oxygen in the room, okay? Your term is coming, but here, I'm giving you 2 minutes with Clint Foster. What do you want to say?
Hey, man, I just wanted to say I'm a big fan. I love his freaking videos, man. They're awesome. So it's hilarious stuff, man. I just wanted to say I couldn't believe you guys had him on here. You guys have gotten big.
We have. It's true. We are the biggest.
It's true. I'm in the mafia, man. What can I say?
Clint.
I appreciate that, Jason.
Yes, sir. No problem, man. Come on my show anytime. We'd love to have you. You're hilarious, man. Love your stuff.
Absolutely.
All right. You guys trade numbers off stage, would you? Gosh. It's just love fest. I'm not sure I can handle this. Clint, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Tell us why TCU will dominate this year.
Okay, so number one, we got a really soft opening to the schedule. Until that BYU game, which is like the 7th game of the year, we ain't playing pretty much anybody, right? We got a very soft open, so I'm fully expecting, even if we're on the low end of production, we should be 6-0 to start the year. By that time, you've got a very talented roster with some really good leadership pieces that is hopefully firing on all cylinders, and you can tackle that tougher back half of the schedule full steam. I heard a practice report today from a guy that I trust a lot that this team, even though we've lost very, very big names off of that college football playoff squad, this team looks more talented and more athletic than last year's team did. Wow. So that has given me a lot of reason for the August overconfidencies, right? But Chandler Morris, if he can stay healthy, that's the big caveat. If Chandler Morris can stay healthy, this is a team that can win a Big 12 championship.
Nice.
I love it. That sounds awesome. Well, everybody, if you're new to the channel or you just started to watch, please subscribe. Make sure you follow these guys on Twitter and give them thumbs up and definitely leave them comments because they take that stuff to heart and work on their own shows. And we're going to have them on throughout the season. And it's going to be a fantastic year this year. So, Clint, we really appreciate you being here. And anybody else want to say something before he goes?
Cheers.
That's right. Huge drinking.
And hit me up on Twitter, man. We'd like to have you on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Bomber. It's a pleasure always.
Yeah, we'll do it again soon. We got to do your TCU preview show, so that'll be in the next 3 weeks.
Absolutely. Go Big 12, baby.
All right. We'll see you later, brother. See ya. All right. Oh my goodness, this is just going from win to win to win.
Every time I see your setup, man, you've got the best setup. Tell you what.
Yeah,
Jason's
a stud.
Kudos.
Hey, thanks, man. We've been working at it a little bit. You know, we've got the studio kind of set up and the lighting even. So I mean, I look terrible, but you know, at least it's bright. you know. but yeah,
It's a
we
good
got the
setup.
green screen and some of that. So yeah, it's going pretty good, man. We're excited about it.
Hey, I was
I wanna
hoping that we
invite
could actually
everybody-
get into something,
Sorry,
guys, like a little bit more on the FSU stuff, right? The FSU and like the private equity, you know, the potential Saudi investor group and everything that might be able to fund their exit of the ACC. Have you guys dug much into that topic to understand how they would actually approach that or how they get that done with like a JP Morgan?
I know that the Piff fund, whatever it is there in Saudi Arabia, it's been involved in a lot of sports for a long time. So this isn't as new as I think everybody thinks it is, as far as it may be with college football and as far as like a single school or whatever. But, you know, the whole PGA Tour versus Live Golf thing, you know, that was kind of a weird deal because of the fact that they were, you know, and first I just want to say that I am no fan of the Saudis and their influence in America, but it's there. It's been there for a long time. They actually, for all the stuff that they gave all those players, you know, we're talking about maybe $3 billion in upfront money to players to come to the Live Tour or whatever. They do about $40 billion a year with the top 20 sponsors of the PGA Tour in business. So, I mean, it was a drop in the bucket. They already were funding the DP World Tour largely, and they fund all of women's golf. So that's not new. Horse racing, they've been there for a long time. Now they're into the NFL. They've been into, you know, there's just a lot of this going on. You know, when it comes to all that, the Arab world and its money with all the oil and everything is heavily invested all over the world in sport. And so when you look at, you know, you got the Women's World Cup going on. I think the biggest part of most of those premier leagues and stuff like that, those big moneymaker football, soccer teams around the world are a lot of times owned with Arab money. So this is nothing new, really. I think that it's just a matter of time, you know, particularly with the NCAA's kind of getting out of it.
Yeah, the Sportico put an article out a few days ago, and it looked like FSU is trying to get an investor to come in to help them fund the exit of the ACC. In exchange, they'd be giving some type of media rights, like some type of allocation of their future media rights, or forming a brand new type of conference to get that done. That's their investment, basically, is the media rights of FSU. And it just seems like there's all kind of holes in that. It's kind of an interesting idea. I don't know how it would work, you know, because you're not actually bundling everything in a grant of rights with the conference, but you're kind of selling off your own media rights to a degree. It seemed like that's.
Yeah, I don't know if that has to do with, because if you know, like even now, a lot of these places, and I don't know how it is there in Utah, but my guess is that you have a local station that covers and carries all your games, right? Aside from that, so you've got regional deals, you've got national deals, right? And then the NFL was like that for a long time, where you remember on the Sunday ticket they would black out games if they didn't fill the stadium up, but they would black them out there in the city of the NFL games. So I think there's different levels of the media rights deals and stuff, and the grant of rights and things like that. I think once it gets on that national level or whatever, then obviously you're owned up by ESPN because they've got the biggest amount of money. But then I also kind of think about like pay-per-view sport. You'll have multiple pay-per-view companies that are selling it right here in the country, but then you've got a completely different one overseas that carries it. You know, I always think of what is it, Sky Sports from England or whatever, right, that covers a lot of that kind of stuff. So they can sell it. It seems like they would probably be selling it like that. Maybe. I mean, to be honest with you, I hadn't dove into this a ton yet, but my guess is just knowing kind of what the way things are with media rights and stuff up until this point. I think that when you start getting out of country, if you're getting other countries that are broadcasting it, or maybe they're just buying into whatever profits and stuff in the future are coming for it. I mean, there's lots of different things that it could be, I guess.
I think antitrust, the PIF fund specifically, right? They already had antitrust things with the PGA and the Live. So they're not going to be, I realize what you're saying, I read the same article and they did talk about the media rights themselves. It'll be interesting to see if they can sublet those, because the problem with college sports is they're still tax-free, right? And the minute you start talking semi-pro, you know, second level pro, anything like that, you separate it from education. That's the thing that's stopping a breakaway league of the SEC and the Big Ten. The minute they do that, they lose their tax exempt status, and now they're not making as much money, right? Even the universities would actually end up subsidizing those organizations because there's so much money they'd be paying in taxes. So the wealth fund part of it, I think at this point, is just literally a tool, a device to pay out to get out of the ACC contract. At the end of the day, that's what it's going to be. Right, exactly. And they'll pay it back on future.
That it's a loan. Yeah.
Right. And it'll be paid back on future revenues from the bigger conference they go to. And but that doesn't mean though that we should be blind to it. I think we all should open our eyes and say, this could be a level of the future that we have to deal with. Who knows that somebody doesn't come along and say they want to buy a conference. Right? There was talk for 5 minutes.
This is the model for decoupling your basketball rights.
Exactly right. And
this is if this works, this is the model, guys. This is that's how you do it. And you might make a lot more money if you do it this way too.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't tell me that there's billions of dollars in the NCAA tournament in the entire month of March and the rest of the year isn't worth anything. What are you kidding me? That don't even make any sense. You know?
Yeah, and the model that's marketing. You know, if you put Yormark in charge of the entire bit of college basketball. In other words, you just said, Yormark, just run basketball. Maybe that's his next step. He walks away from the Big 12 and says, I want to take over the basketball for the NCAA. He'll turn it into another NBA, better product NBA that'll have more competition, have more visibility, and will be worth more money. I could easily see that happening. But those are great questions.
He's probably going to be Yeah, I don't know. The NCAA is not just going to give that up, though, because that's what they still have control over. You know,
that's the only one.
The tournament, you know, they don't have any control over college football at this point. Their teeth have been taken out when it comes to anything, whether their enforcement arm and all that stuff. I mean, I don't know. Harbaugh, he just got that 4-game suspension or whatever. I kind of wonder whether or not he actually does it.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a good question.
He can still practice during that time. He just can't be on the game field. So it's
a slap on the wrist. Back in the day, 20 years ago, you know, what happened to Pete Carroll? Right? Pete Carroll got crucified for stuff that had nothing to do with him. Now you could say he turned a blind eye.
Sure.
Well, right? Lack of institutional control or whatever you want.
Yeah. Come on.
But it was USC. It was like the all-star team. Those teams were some of the best teams in the history of college football. And now you could say Alabama and Georgia are the same thing. Who doesn't think those teams are being subsidized by individuals? Nobody. Everybody knows money's getting to them, right?
Well, look at the states they're all starting to pass these NIL laws that are basically saying the NCAA has no jurisdiction here, none.
Right.
Nothing that we do with our NIL for our student athletes in this state. Oklahoma being one of them. It's specifically written into the law that the NCAA has nothing to do, that they will not recognize any rulings on their part when it comes to how they pay their players, what they pay their players, or anything like that. Their law is for the state, and you're good luck with that.
I think the federal law is where we're going to have bigger moves in the NIL world. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but when they went to the Supreme Court over that, what did Justice Kavanaugh do? He looked at you, said, "You're here for something else, but you guys' labor practices you should be in prison for it." Basically, you know.
Right.
Nobody at the federal level is backing the NCAA either. So, you know, you can have a lot of people screaming and yelling and complaining about the way things are being done, but in truth of it is it should have been taken and handled much better a long time ago, and made sure that these players were able to get money, and it wouldn't be the Wild West now, you know, because once that ruling came down and they just decided, well, we'll just go to NIL. Well, then there's no kind of, I hate the word guardrails, but there wasn't any, you know, at all. So now it's just been the Wild West. And so everybody's having to adjust, and you go state to state. Florida had to do it. Texas did it. You know, all the states that are, you know, anyone that has a major football program has been doing the same thing. They're all following suit. And in the end, that's the argument that you have politically right now going on in the country is, are states' rights bigger or federal rights bigger? What is it? You know what I mean? So in the end, I don't know. I think that when it comes to the NCAA, they don't have a leg to stand on with college football, and that's why you're about to see it go away from the NCAA.
So what are the odds in 7 years that the Saudis own Big 12 basketball?
Yeah,
I mean, I think you have to give a percentage to it.
It's just, this is making a lot of sense, guys. We're connecting the dots here. I'm telling you.
Right.
This model, it makes a sense, financial sense. So
there's some kind of company anyway, right? Where, Fitz was talking about it on our show about talking about, if Oregon would have went, that you could have sold the naming rights of the league to Nike and said swoosh, call it swoosh. Everybody wears it. Everybody, this is the swoosh conference or whatever you want to call it, whatever they decided to call it. But essentially, it probably would have been a better deal than them taking half to go to the Big Ten, and overall for Phil Knight anyway.
What do we think?
Made a lot more money off.
Yormark's come out and said they're going to rebrand in the Big 12. What do we think about the possibility? And I've put a lot of thought into this actually. And Immaculate, I want your feedback on this. That he actually changes the name of the conference to have it subsidized by a commercial entity. The All-State Big 48, or the Fantastic Conference. I don't care what the name is. It has a commercial entity tied to it. What's the possibility that happens?
Well, it's absolutely possible. Who would do it and how they'd call it? I would hope that they would have some creativity to it. That hasn't been what we have seen so far with naming rights. It's been pretty blatant in your face and just kind of, eye roll worthy. So I'd hope that he would be creative with it, with the company, use maybe their tagline for it, something. But to kind of go back to the talk about the Saudis with the basketball side, you're talking about a head-to-head headbutting match between the Saudis and the NCAA if that happens. The NCAA does not exist without March Madness. And I mean that in a very literal sense. It is held up. Their offices are paid for. All their people are paid for by that tournament. Every single team that is in that tournament, they get a pay cut from that. There is one cut that does not go out to any teams, and that goes to the NCAA. That is what they operate on. So I don't think that the Saudis will get into that because it opens a can of worms so big. It's interesting. I think that they have a better chance getting into football than they do basketball for that reason. When you bring that back up with FSU, my biggest worry for them is, do they try to get into FSU research? Do they try to use this to help get into some other aspects of the university? That's where they need to really be careful, because now you could have research associations who are paying for this done who shy away from you as an institution. We don't want to be associated with that. We don't want this research information to get in their hands. Sure. That's my biggest worry. And that's not fun stuff to talk about on the sports side of things, but it affects it.
There could be some conflicts of interest there.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So we don't know what the money's for. Like they're going to say, oh, it's just a loan. Well, yeah, because it could be. It could just be a loan that they get paid back on because they're going to get a ton of money by whatever conference picks them up in the future when we have conference playoffs or whatever comes up in the future. They'll get that money back, but they may not want it all back because you know what Saudis have more than they need of? Money. What they really need is influence. Their political situation, which I'm not going to get into, is kind of a scary thing for them. So they are buying friends right now out in the world. That's what they're doing. They're trying to keep everyone connected to them. So be careful if you take it. I get it. And if FSU needs to do this, I get it. But just hopefully they read every single line in that contract, basically.
Jason. Yeah. So Big 12, you're leaving. I think Oklahoma and Texas, have been great for the conference for as long as it's lasted. There's been some bad blood and things, but this shows about the Big 12 and then this new iteration, especially starting in 24. You're sort of a scance, right? You're aside a little bit. What's your perception now of where we're at?
Well, I will say that I still cover the Big 12 now, and I will in the future as well too. We, our show is trying to be more than just covering college or just covering Oklahoma or anything. We're deep into tech, and I mean, we've talked about it off air about where we're headed. But myself, I was happy to see kind of what happened, and listen, guys, we've been predicting this for a year what was going to happen, right? I mean, this isn't new. And it was clear because it was coming from the right. So what we were saying was coming from sources that we knew weren't just spouting stuff off, right? And hoping that you could stay together. The writing kind of went up on the wall when Kliavkoff and the pack got through their exclusive time to negotiate and didn't have a deal. And then as soon as the Big 12 picked up that deal and it was the same amount, then you were hearing that they were running out of linear space. No matter how much you heard coming out of the pack that wasn't the case. We knew that. In the end, I got to say, I'm not happy to see that the Pac-12 broke apart. I think that we've said this a bunch, or I know, that I think that we lose something in all this. Yes, they gain money. I mean, I understand. And the money side has exploded in college football. But it really, when we were talking about this on my show the other night, Bomber, and I want to ask you guys what you think about this. I know that you have access, right? I think that the 12-team playoff is adding access. I think that they're not going to stay at 12 very long. I think it goes to 16 probably immediately, right? Within years, within a few years. And so the money's not going away and the access is going to be there. The question is does it become, if you're looking for parity, I don't think that that's what you're getting. Right. If you're looking for the opportunity to actually win a national championship, it probably gets harder the more teams you add to the playoff. Even if you add more access, if you add, say, I don't know what you guys are calling it or whatever, but you're going to have your power 2+1 or whatever the heck you want to call it.
We're calling it A3.
A3. Okay. Yeah. A3. All right. So whatever and however that works, I mean, out of those guys, okay, you're going to have the lion's share of the invites to the dance, right? Yeah. But you're going to let so-and-so in, and you would hope that you're going to see some more Mountain West teams, whatever, or, that aren't in these big conferences get opportunities because somebody's getting left out, right? And I think if you end up at that 72 number that you guys have talked about, or 60 to 72, somewhere in there, I think that's probably about right. In the end, there's never really been, it's not something that they've wanted at the highest level of college football to make this more accessible to the little guy to win the national title.
Right.
That's not what they're looking for.
Yeah.
You can cover that up with more access all you want to, but in the end, the rich are getting richer. And the poor are staying right where they are, right? You're still the opportunity to win one. I think that there's a handful of teams that could sneak in there and get that done. And they are going to be in the Big 12 at this point right now. I don't see somebody from outside of one of those three that's going to win it. And I honestly have a hard time believing that there's too many in the Big 12 that are going to have a real opportunity. When all is said and done, because the arms race, there's so much money discrepancy. And how quick can you really make up that money if you're Brett Yormark? With the basketball stuff they're talking about, that's 7 years away.
Yeah.
Right? 7 years of being $40 million behind. That's a long ways, man.
Yeah.
But Jason, somebody along the way is going to get smart. It's probably going to be SMU, and they're going to pay big NIL contracts to all their players. They're going to get recruits they shouldn't have access to. They're going to become the Gonzaga of college football, because you're saying that it's going to be morphing into March Madness, right? Where you've got a 16 seed versus a 1 seed, and there's no chance. Like it's some variation of that. So
I think it's going to be harder is what I'm saying. I don't think it gets easier. I think it gets harder the more you add, if that makes sense. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it's, but it kind of is. I don't know.
As we spoke about your show the other night, Jason, and Coach I made this very clear. We went back and forth, and it helped me clarify a lot of my own thoughts on the topic, and I thought that was really productive. The idea that you're getting more access is more about, and I hate the word, but it's really a fairness issue. You're getting more people access to the dance, as it were. But you're right. You're still going to have 7 to 8 teams every year that are going to have a more than 60 or 70% chance to win the whole thing, and everybody else is going to be scrapping for the other 25 or 30%.
Sure.
I don't think that's a numbers game. There's no way you can get away from that, because there's only so many 5 stars, there's only so many 4 stars, and they're going to follow the NIL money. And that's going to go to the bigger brands. The question is, are everybody going to be okay with that? Like today, I would say that everybody sitting here, including Iowa, by the way, Immaculate, we would be excited if our team not only made it to the playoff, but won a game or two, right? That would be a win. You could go back and sell to your boosters, and sell to all your fans and to your partners in the media that, hey, we were successful. We won a couple games. We brought our brand forward. We had a great rivalry that year. Everything worked. And now we're going to and everybody wins really at the end of the day. So that's where I think that's the dream scenario. I think the worst scenario would be is if everybody had the 12 to 16 team access, but that 12 to 16 team access was 14 teams from 2 conferences. That would be the nightmare scenario, right? And so that's the thing we would have to, hopefully we can manage.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's where they're headed, but it could be. I mean, I think that it's going to be heavier Big Ten. And I think that, if you're Iowa, I think that right now, I look at it like Georgia. Coach, I said this the other night. What was Georgia before they hired Kirby Smart?
Right.
They were kind of like Iowa in the Big Ten, that they're always kind of right there, but they didn't get it done and win the thing, right? To me, I think Iowa is now. Do they have the same amount of NIL money? No, but they're about to be getting $100 million right along with the rest of the league, right?
Right.
If you get the right coach in there, if you get the right situation going in there, this is a team this is a conference that they have access and they could add that to that, right? That's to me. Now I feel like the Big Ten has to make some strides in competitiveness when it comes to the SEC, because they haven't really been, right? Aside from your Ohio States and even Michigan to some extent, but only really the last couple of years.
I think it's coming.
And I think that it has to be, right? I mean, with all that money, you can't do anything but get better, right?
The Big Ten is historically kind of slow. They sit there in their big high tower and sit, do we care? Well, eventually now they're starting to care how they're looked at nationally. But when USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, maybe Florida State, all these schools start to get brought into it, they're going to have to start caring. Otherwise, they're going to be left behind within their own conference, and that'll be new.
If those conferences don't step up, if those teams don't step up, especially in Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Michigan State even, I'm serious. You guys might not win 5 games a year.
We go down the ladder. We will fall down. I'm not so worried about Iowa. From an Iowa perspective, if we were to make it to the tournament and lose in the first round, I consider that better than going to a bowl game. Bowl game's just one game, and sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. This one mattered. So from the perspective of maybe like an Iowa or a similar type of fan base, just getting to the first round,
absolutely,
that's a win.
Absolutely.
I mean, you get all the time leading up to it. Iowa people travel wherever that game is. It's going to be a party. So we don't really. I mean, we care if we win that, especially because then you can go play again.
Of course, yeah.
But it's better than bowl games.
That's more money. That's more money too. I mean, the playoff payout is a lot more money than the Cheez-It Bowl. And I say the Cheez-It Bowl because that's what Oklahoma was in last year.
Yeah, but, that's right.
But with Oklahoma being in the playoff, those 4 times and out of 6 years, I think it was, you're looking at. I mean, they made a lot of money with that. Now, did they win it? They didn't even get a win in the playoff, and but you were considered up there, one of the elite teams, because you keep going to the playoff. Now, what's going to happen when you get to the SEC? We're going to find out. They're recruiting like an SEC elite, so you're going to see what happens there. But again, I think that even within those conferences, you better be putting those resources that you're getting from this into the program, and I think that. Some programs are going to be easier to do that than others. I mean, you've got some schools that don't care about it one way or the other. I mean, or I don't know that they don't care, but they don't have that tradition of that's their identity is being good at it. I think that certain programs are absolutely going to put in. So I could see Utah being the type, and BYU. BYU has been a national power in the past. Utah. They're right there at being a national power, right? I mean, they're right there. They've missed the playoff by this much a couple of times, and I feel like with last year, had you not lost that, what was that one game that you lost? The Baylor game?
Florida game was the killer, losing that.
Yeah, that really.
Yeah, had you not lost the Florida, so you had 2 losses and one was to Florida, correct?
Yeah, we had 3 losses.
They lost to Oregon State
and Oregon. We beat Oregon State, lost to Oregon.
Oh, I got them backwards.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Right. So it was 2 conferences. I forgot about the Florida one. But anyway, you had a time where there was, you're closer and you're right there on the cusp of it. If you go to a couple of playoffs, all of a sudden things are a little different, right?
Right.
But it's the same like you kind of, I mean, I hate to bring up USC because whatever. But SC, they lose. They were going to be in the playoff. they were going to be in the playoff if they beat Utah in that game.
Yeah.
Even because that was they only had the one loss. So they were right there. But and of course they're blue blood, so they're gonna get consideration there, and that's why they had to make that move.
You're welcome for that win too.
Wild Ute, he's got to go.
I've thanked you awful lot. I love Utah for that. I love
Wild Ute's got to go. Jason,
guys,
you got some time to stick around?
Hey, take care, guys.
Yeah, I can hang out.
Okay, Ute, anything else you want to say before you go?
It's a celebration here. Enjoyed it much. I'm excited to be a part of the Big 12. Good times ahead, and toast to you all. Thanks for coming in the house.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for drinking with us. Appreciate it, Ute. We'll talk to you later. Everybody sign up and follow him on Twitter. All right, I'm going to bring on Chris Catch.
There he is.
Since
What's up, man?
Since you had to leave, I'm going to keep Jason around. We're here at the end of the show. We're going to go a little long, but I appreciate everybody being here. Let me do one last call. If you want your comment to be read, it's going to have to be a super chat. As everybody knows, we've got almost 1,000 comments tonight. The chat has been ridiculous. Rebecca is going over there back and forth. I see you, Rebecca, explaining to everybody why Washington is the thing and how that's going to matter. I appreciate you being here. And everybody else that's participated in the chat and live session, I really, really appreciate it. Please follow us, subscribe to the show, turn on your notifications. That's really big on YouTube, so you know when these shows are going to be happening. They'll ding you, they'll hit you up on your phone, and you won't miss it. And yeah, let's just keep this thing going. The Big 12 is growing, and I want everybody to know that I value every single team in the league. And we'll be doing a tour of the conference this year. Next 3 weeks, I'll be doing breakdowns of a couple schools a night on Big 12 Mafia, and we got some big shows this week. I was going to keep this under wraps, but Mo and Vision, my partner, sort of leaked it.
He got excited.
Thursday night, I've got Bob Thompson on my show.
Oh,
yeah,
Bob Thompson. One. Okay,
Scored.
So if you're watching this in recording, if you're watching, please tell everybody, tell your friends, neighbors, your kids. It is going to be an amazing interview because I'm not going to talk to him about surface stuff. I'm going to ask him really deep, searching questions because he is the absolute god when it comes to realignment. He knows how everything works. We've had Jim Williams on in the past, and he's very, very good at it. But you're talking about a guy that negotiated many deals in realignment over the years.
He's the founder of the Big Ten Network.
That's right. He built the Big Ten Network, which everybody knows now is a monster. So that'll be Thursday night. I'll put out a notification about that. And then I also am going to do a show Wednesday night, just so everybody knows. Okay, let's get to Chris Catch. How are you doing, Chris?
Doing good, man. Life's good. Life's treating me well. Man, feels good being in the Big 12. It feels good. Oh,
okay.
Dude, it's legit. It is legit. I can't believe the warm welcome. Other than the nest that you stirred up, but I can't believe the warm welcome that I got.
Let's talk about this warm welcome because I don't believe you a minute. I don't believe anything out of your mouth right now. You are so lying. Tell us what is going on with Arizona State.
Before Ray Anderson opened his mouth, I was getting congrats, welcome to the Big 12. Everything's golden, everything's good, and then Ray goes and makes the comment of he ain't going to travel to West Virginia. And it just went into battle mode. I'm just like, I'm not the biggest Ray Anderson fan. I wouldn't even call Ray Anderson fan. I'm like, he's done some good things, he's done some questionable things, and he's done some things he shouldn't have done. Right? I love Kenny Dillingham, man. That's Ray Anderson. I'm a Bobby Hurley fan. That's Ray Anderson. I like that he took a chance with her. It crashed and burned. There's some good choices in there. My issue with Ray and Crow is that they take forever. They don't fail fast. They fail very, 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 very slow, and they're very stubborn. And I get it. I understand it, but it's just like, oh my gosh, man. When you brought that to me, I was like, dude, that went on for a day. And I had to travel for some stuff, and I was come back, and I would just have loads of messages.
So
it was great. I loved it.
All I want to say is I appreciate your loyalty to your school, right? And your covering and stuff like this. But so everybody knows, you were talking bad about him a month and a half ago. Yeah. That was stuff you didn't like that he had done a long time ago. So you're backing up your school here, but at the end of the day, I think it was a bunch of crap. All this PR nonsense. It was a joke. It was sarcastic. That was all lies. Let's just say it out loud. It was all lies. He meant every word of it, and all that was them trying to unwind and clean up a mess.
You know, I don't know if it was a joke. He's probably more serious than humorous because Crow joked around with him about getting him an apartment up there. Like, I totally get that part. No, yeah, you're right. Because Ray Anderson was going on a couple podcasts, and he was going on to like local, like the state press and whatever, and trying to be like, no, we love the pack. We're staying in the pack, whatever. You know, and it's just kind of like, dude, the writing was on the wall. I mean, really, this is the result we all talked about when USC and UCLA left, right?
Right. Yep.
4 corners going to the Big 12, Oregon, Washington, you're going to the Big 10. It happened. And they drug their feet. And I will commend them if they truly in their heart believed they're trying to save the pack. If they're doing that, then great. Guess what? Crow's in the Big 12. And if shit hits the fan, then guess what? Crow's he's going to have our back. You know, that's the way I would assume that's what it's going to be. I don't agree with everything he says. And it wasn't so much defending the school. I was just kind of defending the moment where it's like, man, they went to battle. They really wanted to save the pack. And they took a huge L on the face, man. Someone slapped him with an L, and they had to eat crow and go over to the Big 12 and suck it up, man. And Kenny's over there trying to have practice, and they're over there trying to like, yeah, you have Crow in his little hat, like it's all tipped forward like this. Yeah, you know, got my dad hat on, and it was kind of silly. It was expected, but dude, Ray's feelings were hurt. And they went at him, dude, and he had no self-control. And Crow was kind of poking the bear, too, with the whole apartment thing. So I was like, if you believe that, that's fine. I don't care if you believe that. I could care less. Dude, the timing was so poor and immature. Like, joke or not, it was poor and immature. And I'll say that, but I could care less. I never even really think about the ADs going to all the games. But now we're all going to watch. That's when they come up on the schedule. We're going to all sit there and watch, and he's going to show up. I bet
now he has to go.
Yeah, you kind of screwed now. You're going either way now, right?
He probably got away with not
by
going.
By the way, though, Morgantown is a fantastic freaking place to go.
The cameras are going to be searching, find Ray Anderson on the sidelines. Is he there? Like,
right. I got a friend that played for West Virginia. I got friends from West Virginia. I got friends who are loyal West Virginia fans. They love it. They're passionate. Everybody I've met on Twitter and conversed with, they're passionate West Virginia fans. I am looking forward to it. And I do believe we took an L. I think the bowl game was played in Chase Field where the Diamondbacks play, and West Virginia just beat us down in Phoenix for basically a home game for a bowl. So all the respect in the world from him. Yeah, I mean, I thought that he was a little too hard on Ray, but, you know, he didn't handle it all that well.
I will say this for you specifically as an ASU fan, you have represented the school and the fandom very well for the last, we've been doing this 4 months, right? And I think from the very beginning, you were right in, and you were saying, the Pac-12 might stick together, but boy, there's this big future at the Big 12. I could see that coming out of you, and you projected that, right?
Yeah, I'm super excited for everybody. I mean, one of the things that I remember, I grew up in Colorado. So, you know, I was a Buff fan as a kid, and I understood, you know, what it meant to be a CU Buff and all that. And it was super easy for them to recruit. You know, it was the old Big 12, the old Big 8. You just take the kids up to Folsom Field, say, look at the Flatirons, look at this weather. This is a great place to play. But now you got Utah and BYU, the Arizona schools, and Colorado's back. And it's going to be hard to recruit against that. And the Arizona schools, at least they should have an advantage being sandwiched right between California and Texas. So if you have the right AD who's not making comments about West Virginia, you should be pretty solid. But ASU picked up 2 recruits right out of Texas in the first 1 or 2 days. After
I think it's real. I think that's real. I think that's not going to change, and it's going to get better. Immaculate, I see it chomping at the bit.
Did you guys see the interview of Dillingham, especially you, Chris? He said, we kind of saw this coming, so we started shifting our recruiting to Texas and getting guys to be prepared for that. I was just like, you know, Cut through the bullshit. Like Chris is saying, we all saw where these schools were going to go. They're going through all this legal dancing and all this to cover their butts about who goes when and first and all that. So that way you're legally covered for not causing damage to the leftovers or whatever. But in the end, it went down exactly as it was. And Dillingham came out and just said, yeah, we saw where this was going. So we started recruiting in Texas.
Yeah.
Done.
And like the whole talk about Arizona, like, well, Arizona's going to leave without ASU. That was never going to happen.
Right.
Either school leaves, they're weaker. If we went to the Big 12 or the Big 10 and Arizona was stuck in the pack, we're weaker.
Yes.
And vice versa. Like, whatever. We're symbiotic with each other. And I love that, we went in with it. Arizona, they had their paperwork done first. We came in later with Utah. And it's going to be so much fun. I can't wait to see Power 5 Holy War.
Right.
Like, I think can't wait for that. I can't
look
wait
at Jason. Jason's going.
Hey, let me ask you something real quick on that, Chris. How would you feel about Arizona State game not being the last game of the year? Like if they were not in the same conference, like we have to do with Iowa State, it is nowhere near the same.
It's not as fun because
they couldn't do that.
If you go undefeated, if ASU goes undefeated, Arizona goes undefeated, it's the final game of the year and they're rivals. Like, you're out for blood. Everything's on the line. That's what you want. If both of you are defeated, you're out for blood because you want to get that one win. No matter what, someone's going to go. It's going to be done. I think it was right before COVID. I went to ASU U of A game in Tempe. They put a beautiful State of Arizona with Sparky right on the 50-yard line. And the Arizona students went out with their cleats and started scratching and digging into the logo right there. And then it
gets a little chippy.
Yeah, it gets chippy. And so we're in the lower bowl, but we're there at the top. And my kids, they hand out the big posters and all. They can write whatever they want. Well, it slid behind into the stands behind us, and some Arizona fans were there. And I was like, "Hey, can I grab that as my kids?" Right? Because I didn't think they were doing anything to the kids. It was this lady, and she started stomping on all their stuff, put footprints all over it. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to yell at her because she's a woman. But I looked at my kids. I'm like, for the rest of the night, I don't care what you say, what you do to this person. It is all you. And they gave her hell, especially when we took the lead. I was like, they gave her hell. So there's no love lost. Shoot, one more. We're living in Colorado, and I had my ASU gear on. And I'm walking through the grocery store. I ran into two separate families wearing Arizona stuff in Colorado. And I told them, I walked right up to both of them and said, I moved away to here to get away from you. If you would kindly leave, I would appreciate this. There's no love lost, but we know we need each other. And that's what makes it fun. And I'm excited for you in Utah. I thought it was like, everybody's like, oh, we don't want Utah. Bull.
It's like siblings that don't like each other, but at the same time, if you come mess with them,
Yeah, I want to see CU get a rivalry. I feel bad for them because Nebraska's in the Big 10, sucking in the Big 10, and we couldn't grab CSU. I'm like, I don't care if they suck. If you got CU a rival to fight, I just feel like they're just kind of like lost in space over there. Everybody else got somebody to fight with, and it's like, well, so you can play Kansas State. I'm like, yeah, but Kansas State hates Kansas.
Yeah,
they're not
gonna have to manufacture something.
Like everybody in Arizona doesn't like California. Right. So when USC comes along, we want to just wreck them, and it's hard to wreck them, but we want to.
The good thing about CU though is they've been in the Big 12 before. They were part of the original Big 8, and so they have some rivalries with schools there already. Yeah, they've got some history with a lot of them, and I think Kansas State being one of them. Particularly because they were good at the same time. In the 2000s, early 2000s, in the 90s, and stuff like that. I think that was kind of some of it there. The biggest thing with me, I think that I love the ASU Arizona rivalry there too as well, and I think that the Holy War is huge, right? When you lose Red River, which made up a ton of the revenue in the conference, you lose those two teams from that rivalry, and all of a sudden we've said it a bunch. That's the thing that keeps eyes on the sport. It's not the size of the market. I know the size of the market matters in some respects, but it's not that. It's if that was the case, nobody would give a crap about Tuscaloosa. and Alabama playing in the Iron Bowl. That's pretty much the biggest one. So to me, it's so much less about that. It's more about preserving these rivalries. I hate it that Oklahoma State doesn't want to continue playing the Bedlam rivalry, because even though it's not very competitive usually, but it's that being said, it's hatred. It's hatred, like what you're talking about, and that's real stuff, man. When you look at, my high school, we were orange in my high school. I don't even wear it unless I go to a game for my high school now. I don't want to wear orange ever because I hate Oklahoma State, and it's that same kind of orange as them. And then you got burnt orange for Texas too. So we're just like, no, screw that. No.
Well, I can't wait. I'm trying to learn everything about the new Big 12. And when you're looking at what Brett Yormark's doing, he's got the, he's trying to get up basketball in New York. Good luck. That one's going to be a little bit tougher one than anticipated, I think. But the NFL Combine just for the Big 12 players, I think that's just huge. That's absolutely huge. And I'm interested how he's going to leverage Phoenix, because this year we have the Final Four. We've had national college football championships played at State Farm Stadium. So I'm like, you have venues where you can really capitalize with them. We've already done it, right? This is something like, this is what we do. We host conventions. We host big sporting events. We've done this. So how are you going to leverage us now? And it's going to be fun. I can't wait to see how BYU and Cincinnati and Houston and UCF get at it. UCF got fired. They're just hanging out there in Florida, but they're going to mess some fools up.
Another one to go along the lines with that I wanted to add in is, we talk about ASU and how people don't like them right now. I think that's momentary. We talk about Utah and how people don't like them. And that's momentary. It's going to fade away. People aren't going to remember all this. But what's going to last, and what you're actually probably going to see come game time, is some, I don't want to say hatred, but some very harsh feelings from the Hateful Eight folks towards Colorado. Because remember, at one point in time, Colorado said, we don't want to be here. And now here you are coming back. When they go into Kansas State, when they go into Oklahoma State, when they go into these places for their first games there as an in-conference game, those are going to be tough locations for those guys to play in. It's going to be a little rough there.
Oh, I think it will. And I don't know if they're going to be able to handle it very well. When they moved over to the made it the Pac-12, I remember, because I was living in Longmont at the time, and I worked in Boulder, and I go walk around Folsom Field on my lunches, and they hung these banners at every single Pac-12 school, and they were very welcoming to all the Pac-12 schools that visited. They were handing out flyers at the mall saying when ASU came to play basketball. The YMCA did free tickets for the girls' basketball between ASU and CU. Super, super welcoming. Come watch games here in Tempe. They could care less. Nobody cared. And it was just from that point on, especially since they weren't winning, they're just kind of irrelevant. And I'm excited for them, because now they're kind of going home, and they do have that history, and they can go back. But you're right. There's going to be a lot of those older fans that are like, you turned your back on us for money, and then you turned your back on the Pac for money.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's the longer-term story. That's the one that's going to stick.
Well, and it burns deep. I mean, those are damaging experiences, and I think that people that aren't paying attention don't understand the long-term fallout. We don't know what everything's going to look like. The ACC still isn't resolved. The A3 is coming. I think everybody agrees on that. But what does it look like, and how long does it take? And then I think this thing about exposure and access is really a dynamic. The 2026 deal for me is massive. If they come up with a naming, like let's just say the PIF fund comes in and says, we want the naming rights and we want to own a 16-team playoff for college football, and we'll give you $5 billion to do it.
Right.
Do you see these leagues and these teams turning that money down? And they have the money. Yeah. They own Premier League. They own Champions League. They own World Cup. As Jason described, everything that they have taken over. There's no reason. They know this is the one growing sport. They can't buy the NFL. The NFL is not going to be for sale ever. But I think this is really a chance that something could come along where they just say, we want the whole shooting match and we'll fund you. It could absolutely happen.
Absolutely.
if I could offer up a little bit of counter to that, I think the way
no,
can't. It'll just be quick, I promise.
No, I'm teasing. Go ahead. I don't care.
The way the college football playoff is managed and run, I actually find it kind of hard for an outside group like that to come in and really take over, because it's ran by basically 11 different entities. Right. And so they would have to come in and pay off every single conference and Notre Dame in order to get that. I think they could. Could they? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying that's what they're up against. This isn't coming in and buying off one entity.
Which is worth more money, the PGA Tour or college football playoff?
No, yeah.
Which is worth more money? I mean, it's a flat number, right?
Although,
what is the only event in the world
I don't know
that's bigger
now that
than?
I think about it. I mean, look, we may not be golfers here. I'm not a big golfer here.
I am.
You are.
Yeah, I play.
Jason, you answer that.
Do you think ask the question then? I guess I missed the question. I'm sorry.
The question is, which is worth more money, the college football playoff, 16 teams, or the PGA Tour?
Oh, the college football playoff.
Yeah. I mean, there's not even a question. It's the right behind the NFL in the U.S.
There's a lot of money in golf. Don't get it twisted. There's
I'm not getting twisted, but it's better than the NBA. It's better than the NBA. It's better than Major League Baseball. It is literally it's bigger than the 16 team playoff will be bigger than the basketball tournament.
Oh, is that your pick? You think it's going 16?
Oh yeah, I think it's 26.
I think by it could as early as 26. I think. With the way the things are going to set up, I think so.
Yeah, something
more games, more teams, more.
What do you think about that, Chris? Do you agree with that? Do you think it's coming
I
soon?
agree. I mean, you have to go bigger. You have to see I always pick on people because ASU hasn't won a football championship, so I'm like, you need a playoff, and you need more than a 14 playoff because you're just voting. It'd be like all of us. Like we're gonna go pick one of our friends to go head to head, and hopefully it looks good. And it's crap. But if you look at March Madness, what did we get last year? UConn and San Diego State.
Right.
Loved it. I'm like, could you imagine? Say BYU's having a decent year, and they're like a 12th seed. And somebody else pops in at like an 8 seed and BYU finds himself in the championship game because they're given a chance. How many college football teams you see close strong, but they don't have the record to be in big bowls or playoff games?
Like Utah last year, legitimately could have been a playoff team, and TCU took it just because they had the one loss. I mean,
we'll never know. Or when UCF, they went undefeated.
Right, 2017. Yep.
Right. We'll never know if they could beat someone. Or I'll even back it up. CU, when they had the 5 downs against Missouri.
Right.
Right. Except Georgia Tech went undefeated.
Yeah.
So I tell the Buff fans, I'm sorry, Georgia Tech went undefeated. CU, if you went undefeated, you would say you won the championship. Georgia Tech went undefeated. Yeah. You can't argue it. And it wasn't like there were different levels of football. It's Georgia Tech.
Yeah, it's all perception, though.
Hey, Bomb, can I throw the other idea here at these two guys? I want to see what they think about.
Sure.
You guys are all thinking 16. I'm thinking that they actually go smaller with the tournament and
like 12?
Actually do conference playoffs to where. Oh,
that's right. I forgot that's your idea. Yeah.
Conferences of anywhere up to 25 schools. Now all of a sudden you can run your own conference playoff, and in the Big Ten, it's a national playoff. And if you're the SEC, how many times do you hear from the SEC say basically the entire lineup in the playoffs should be SEC teams? And if I was to go to the SEC folks and say that, they'd be like, yeah, I'd watch that. So you could have your own conference playoff in the SEC of SEC teams, and you just take your champions and you put them in like a Super Bowl style tournament.
I think the problem with that, though, if you go that way, a third conference dies. If you do those sub leagues, the third conference would die. It would be the SEC and the Big 12.
I think that's a little extreme because you're going to have a tournament at that top end instead of a Super Bowl. You'd have,
but you still end up with 4 teams. Like the example of Utah last year. If you had a mini tournament and everything cascaded up, you still have the opportunity that these good teams don't get through.
But
it's about the seeding at the end of the year.
You got to understand that the college football playoff is ruled by G conferences just as much as it is about the big ones. So they are going to control what happens in 2026 just as much as the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12. So you got to have some type of solution that they would say yes to.
Yeah.
So, wait though. The guys that decided on the college football playoff, though, it wasn't G5 schools. It was Greg Sankey and Swarbrick from Notre Dame.
Yeah, Notre Dame.
So I mean,
but those guys are only at the next load. They're at the management level, so they come out and they're the ones that are talking about it. But the ones at the executive level are above them that actually make the votes.
But that's where the money comes in.
So like
that's where the
Condoleezza
big
Rice?
stick of the money comes
Sure, and that's how it's been now. But what we're looking at 2026, and even Yormark said, is you're taking a blank slate. You're looking at something entirely different. That's all
I
I'm
think they're going to blow
here.
it up. I think they're going to blow it up.
I'm
but
looking at
they're going to give more
insane.
power to group of whatever schools, you know.
Yeah,
but it's
they're
not
going to give more power to those
it's
guys.
not more power though. The money that the main conferences will get paid for their conference playoffs will dwarf what they're getting paid right now for the national playoff, and they'll control it all. They won't have to worry about how many teams they get in and the budget, because if you go from 2 to 4 teams in there, your budgets that are coming in are different. Whereas if you have a conference playoff that is the vast majority of the money, it's fully budgeted. You know how much it's going to be because you have another TV deal for that. So I'm just saying, it's just a different idea for people to kind of throw around, is that if they're going to go do something entirely different, the conferences aren't going to want to continue to put more of the power outside of their control, especially the big power conferences. They're going to want to bring it back in.
But let's circle back. We had the discussion, and I think it was very valuable when we said, if you qualify for the playoff, is that a bigger deal than qualifying for the championship game in your league? You can go to your boosters and say, we made the playoff in
TCU says
2026, and that is a bigger deal to qualify for the playoff.
Same thing. TCU
than it is to do anything in your own conference or championship game.
But that changes in 24.
I don't. No, it doesn't.
Because of the bye. Because as a conference champion,
I still don't think that matters. I think getting into the playoff is still going to be a benchmark.
No, but that's the same for both choices.
We just look at it differently. I just think there's a perception issue.
He's saying, I get what Immaculate's saying though. When it goes to 12 in 2024, winning the conference championship means that you're in.
And you're also getting a bye in the first round, probably.
But what you're talking about in the future, past 24, is a conference having its own conference tournament.
Yes,
and then those qualifying for the bigger. And I'm saying that is not BYU, if they get to their conference championship game but don't qualify for the big dance, is not going to be able to go back to its boosters and say, "Hey, we need more money for NIL. We're back to being nationally relevant because you lost that last game." And a good example of that again is Utah last year. They won their championship game. They were frozen out. So I just don't think.
Yeah, but they had 3 losses though. That's why they were frozen out.
Well, but in 12 teams they would not have been. In 12 teams they qualified last year.
Yeah, because of the power pressure.
That's what I'm saying. And but the point is it's a bragging point, right? That's what we're talking about at this point. There's 6 teams that can win the championship. There's 12 or 16 that can brag they made it to the playoff.
Mm-hmm. And
that's what I think is going to come down to.
I'm kind of saying the same thing happens. I don't want to argue too much. At the
I'm not arguing.
I'm
just giving a counter.
I'm just saying, but you get the same thing. You get the same bragging right. If say you have 5 divisions. If you have 5 divisions in your conference, you got this large 25-team conference at the top of competition, and you win your division of 5, and you go in as a division champion into the conference playoff. That's one bragging right. If you go through and you win your conference championship through that tournament, that's a second bragging right. That gets you an automatic berth to the national tournament of champions, and if you win that, that's a third bragging right. I mean, it's creating more titles, but what it mostly does, most of all, and this isn't the fun part, it creates more postseason games. And that's all the networks care about because that's opportunities to make advertising. That's the only reason why I don't make that from like a viewership thing. Like I don't never necessarily like that better. I like the idea of the big national tournament because that's going to put our teams against your teams against their teams.
Sure.
But as a business, what these guys are doing, that is more games in the postseason where it's demand heavy, where there's not enough supply. So you're selling more games. That's all I'm putting that forward is for
the other thing you're losing is you're losing cross regional games. BYU Ohio State,
100%.
a 12 seed versus the 1 seed.
Yep.
That game by itself would be a Super Bowl for BYU, right?
Yeah.
You lose that if you doing these conference championship sort of tournaments. You lose those cross country battles, because now you're not going in a bigger tournament that's individual schools.
You're right.
You're going in
100%.
your small region, and yeah, you get more tournament games, but you're losing that ability for somebody to travel across the country, get in front of different
More
people,
eyes.
and try to
Right.
get a chance to be the Cinderella. And if you remove that from it, then the whole thing falls apart. College is passion. It's not business.
If you want to talk about a Cinderella, though, and let's use the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, for example. Them getting in a Cinderella right now, they go undefeated and they still don't get in. But if you give them a chance to have their own conference tournament, their own conference playoff that a champion comes out of, now you could argue that they go in as a Cinderella to then in the Champions League to go up against some of the big champions.
I actually
and
think
they probably lose
that.
first round, and they lose first round.
But
that's what people love about the basketball tournament.
But don't be surprised if the AAC plays the Mountain West for a berth. For the G5 leagues, I think that's quite possible.
I think
for the top leagues, I don't
West
think it is
going to merge anyway. So, but I get your point, and that is a very valid point that they would like the top Gs will compete for a spot.
For a spot, and then that spot would then get into the bigger tournament.
Whether they're playing each other or not, they're going to be competing for that spot.
Right, that they're playing for one spot. Whether they make it a tournament game or not is irrelevant.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think a conference postseason for them. Yep. Cool.
Oh, sorry.
No.
I was saying, one of the holding this up was back in the day when we wanted a playoff, and they're like, we can't have a playoff because that's going to take away from the students and their education.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden we have 4 time zones in the Big 10 and the Big 12 from going coast to coast. Yeah. And now we're expanding our playoff to 12 here really quick. And it's like, these guys just lie. I would love just to hear like one day of them telling the truth.
Well, I said that the other night. It's like, I don't want to hear from when we were talking about the gambling stuff at Iowa State, I was like, I don't want to hear from the NCAA on this. You've been lining your pockets. You've been lining your pockets on the backs of these kids forever. Right. And it's always been about, and here you go. And I'll give my little Scrooge McDuck thing. I mean, they're over there swimming in their vault full of gold that they won off of the backs of these kids. You know what I mean? And then they're going to come in and tell me about amateurism and student athletes. I don't want to hear that crap. You know what I mean? I don't want to hear it from them. Do I think that you need to knock it off when it comes to the whole deal with the gambling? Yeah, you guys got to know better than that. Kids got to, and you're going to have to come down hard on Iowa and Iowa State for that kind of crap too. You do. But because you cannot afford the look of impropriety here. You cannot.
Gambling is a no-win. It's got to be zero tolerance to gambling.
Well, look, Arizona, they got investigated by the FBI. Nothing, hand slap. Air Force and ASU both had recruits come in during COVID. Air Force got their hand slapped like a year ago. We're still under investigation.
Yeah.
This isn't that hard. Like, it's just games. It's just leverage. I'm going to hold this over you until either I can't use the leverage anymore or until I need to squeeze you.
Again, yeah, and I don't think that anything comes of that. I think that everything that's come down about ASU is going to go away. It's going to go away because the NCAA has no power. They have no power. How are you going to freaking say something to us when you haven't done things right forever? It's laughable. And the ones that want to see, like Nick Saban, for instance, Nick Saban wants to see you cannot use it as an enticement. You can't use NIL as an enticement. Why? Because you were better at cheating and using it as an enticement than the rest of them. That's why he doesn't like it. Don't get it twisted. That's exactly why he doesn't like NIL. It's not because he doesn't want players to get paid. They've been getting paid by him. They've been getting them paid. It's not about that. It's about that he doesn't like that now you've taken away his advantage. And this is just the way things are,
You guys, we got to wrap this up. 2.5 hours. I said 2 hours, and we went way past. Just Moen. I'm sorry, it's Immaculate's fault. Immaculate, I blame him.
Blame the Iowa guy.
Blame the Iowa guy. Chris, thank you so much for coming in late, man.
I appreciate everybody. Thanks for working with me.
I gave everybody else a chance to say something on the way out. You and Jason and Immaculate too. What do you guys want to say as we wrap this thing up? It's a Big 12 celebration. We're happy to have everybody here. Let's get bigger and better, right?
Yeah, I'll take that. I love the Big 12. This is fun. I'm excited. I'm thinking maybe this is the thing that finally wakes the sleeping giant out of ASU. And West Virginia, I love you guys. You're a lot of fun. Ignore Ray. Ray, go on vacation for a month or so. Let it all die down. Don't say anything. Just say, I love the Big 12. I wish I would have come here sooner. I love the Big 12. I can't wait to see what we do in the Big 12 as Sun Devils. And I can't wait to see all the new faces and what they do and how we all mix. I think SEC and Big 10 better watch out because we coming. And you know what? Deion's got the Louis. Deion's bringing the bags. We coming.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Jason.
Hey, man, I'm excited about the future of college football. I think that in the Big 12 too. I think that the Big 12 got a lot better this last week. I was, as an Oklahoma fan, I wasn't expecting the Big 12 to even live once Texas and OU left. And it probably only did because the Pac was so terrible at handling things. But the truth is, now they have an opportunity to thrive. And I think that to go out there and to get the schools that you got, whether it was Oregon and Washington or not, who cares? I think that you went and got big time schools. Utah's won the last 2 Pac-12s. I think that if you think that Coach Prime and CU are going to suck, you are on another planet, because they're not going to suck. They are recruiting right up there with the biggest of the big boys. I think that the same goes for, you just got way better in basketball. And I think that Arizona, with Coach Dillingham, Arizona State is going to be very good. I think Arizona's got a good coach too, right? I think Arizona's got a good coach too. I don't think that they're going anywhere. So do you have the blue bloods of Texas and OU? No. But it might actually now, and it was already the most competitive football league, top to bottom. And it just got more competitive. So
right.
I think I think you just helped yourself a lot. And I think that, good for Utah to come around, and Arizona State to some extent too. I don't think that they were as I know somebody at Arizona State, and I know that they weren't as what's the word? Resistant to moving as they put out there, but you kind of had to put it out there. I get that. I don't think that Crow handled it very well, but in the end, I do believe that all along you kind of had to see this coming. If you didn't see this coming, then you weren't paying much attention. So I'm glad that it worked out that way. I hate to see the Pac die, but I would, if being honest about it, I would rather see the Big 12 live than die. So
I love it.
Good stuff, man.
Immaculate.
I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, you bet. Immaculate. Anything you want to finish with?
Focusing in on the Big 12 here. This is a new time, a new day in college football here, where a lot of these schools have had to kind of play second fiddle, even when they're at their tops and when they're at their best. And so it's a new opportunity for these schools, this set of schools, to kind of rise up and be on that same stage as, to be honest, as programs like Oklahoma. Oklahoma dominated for a long time within the conference, and it felt like a top-heavy conference. But now, really, anyone can take that position at any year, and they'll have same access as anyone from the SEC or the Big Ten. So it's really kind of exciting to see this. And whether they believe it or not, the Big 12 is the Cinderella conference with all the benefits of a top-tier conference.
Right,
so that's why I'm sitting here going, I freaking love this. And when people are like, oh, you don't have these big brands, not this, I'm like, who cares? This is the conference to follow and to watch, to say who's going to be the surprise. Like, I don't have to like all of them. I just like the conference, in that I don't know what's going to happen from year to year. I don't know if Arizona State's going to come out and just be dominant and massive, or maybe it's going to be Kansas State that continues to punch people in the face who come into town and don't realize what they're getting into.
Coaches matter.
So it's a new day for a conference that we kind of all thought was getting torn apart. I mean, we thought we were going to have a Big Four someday, and the Big 12 was not going to be it.
Right.
And now here we are. We're going to 3 conferences, and the Big 12 is one of them. It's ludicrous, but great at the same time. So good times with that. In terms of looking in the future, watch what's going on in the ACC if you're a Big 12 person.
Right.
The Big 12 is tied up with ESPN. So if there's a movement coming out of that conference, I'm not saying there is or there isn't, but if there is, look at what that could do for your conference. And that's just some more schools that are in the same boat as you that are going to have that opportunity and be hungry. So it's going to be good times for the conference in the future, I think.
I agree.
I appreciate that. Thanks everybody for being here. He always has that hard cap at 2 hours, so I'm sorry he wasn't able to see everybody off at the end, but we really appreciate all the super chats. The community is amazing. It's only growing. Follow these guys, whether they have a show or not. They're contributors. They're important people, and we're a community. And the Big 12 is much stronger together. The tighter the league gets, the closer associations that we have, influencers to fans, the better we'll be and the stronger we'll be when this new negotiation happens in 26 for the college football playoff. I want everybody to keep that in the back of their minds. Thanks for being here tonight. This was a party. I hope everybody understood that was a big deal. We're not going to dunk on people around here. The only thing that we really wanted to do is bring up the absurdity that was ASU. And Chris, you got caught in the middle of that. But everybody else,
I loved every second of it, though.
I appreciate it. And stick with us. Wednesday night, I'm going to have a show. I haven't got the topic out yet, but I will. Please turn on your subscriptions on and notifications on YouTube so you get those.
Okay.
Follow all these guys on Twitter. And we'll talk to you later. Peace out. See you, everybody.
Hi, guys.
See you.